we would sell the rest of it to the tourist hotel. So before I get started, I'd just like to read some from the Bible, just a few scriptures. I'd never read a Bible before in my entire life until this experience happened in 1982. And so I'd like to just read a few things that have become very real and very personal to me. In the first epistle of John, in chapter 1, and beginning in verse 5, it says, "This is the message that we have heard from God and announced to you, that God is light, and in God there is no darkness at all. If we say that we have fellowship with God and yet walk in darkness, we lie and do not practice the truth. But if we walk in the light as God himself is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Jesus Christ, his Son, cleanses us from all sins. If we say we have no sin, we are deceiving ourselves, and the truth is not in us. If we confess our sins to God, he is faithful and righteous to forgive us of all our sins and to cleanse us from all our unrighteousness. If we say that we have not sinned, we make God to be a liar, and God's word is not in us." Let's read another passage. In Acts chapter 4, in verse 12, it says that there is salvation in no other name. There is no other name under heaven that has been given among men by which we must be saved, save the name of Jesus Christ. Okay, so I come with a very simple message, and yet one that will totally and dramatically affect your life. And it is a decision and a commitment that each man, woman, and child will be brought to at some stage in their life. I was born in Tipuna. Anyone know where Tipuna is? Tauranga? Snodgrass Road. And raised up, my parents were teachers, lived in country areas, went across the T-Rail, Nutanui, so over towards Kawhia way, Ohalpo, and then Hamilton. And just through those years, my family, my father was born around the, well actually in Auckland, but most of his childhood around the Waihi Beach. And then my mother was Pairoa, and the other grandmother was Te Araha, so the Thames Valley type people. And so as a young child, we used to go to Waihi Beach. My granddad founded the RSA there and the bowling club, and so we were kind of the local yokels down there at Waihi. And every summer we go there. And as a young child, fishing off Mau Mau Rock down in Bowen Town, and going across to Orikau after pawas and mussels. As a young kid growing up, the sea became a very important part of my life. And so go down to Kaha and Motiri Islands and Slipper and Shoe, Penguin. Loved the sea. My mum said I had fish blood in me. Spent more time in the water or on it or under it. If I couldn't catch them fishing, I'd get my spear gun and go down and spear them. And I was a very, very competent swimmer, diver. Basically, my parents and family are very good sports people, so we're into every sport, you know, rugby, basketball, anything that was going, we're into, from golf to tennis. We just live for sport and love the outdoors. As a young kid growing up, always used to go across and get the billy from the farmer, from the cow shed, and as a young kid I had a real fascination with farming, really loved it. After finishing my time at Hamilton Boys High, went down to Lincoln University, and did a degree in management. 74 to 78, that's right, I graduated in 78. Did a degree in management, came out and worked up in Rotorua for the dairy board. Went to Tirohonga, Galatea, Reparoa, Atamuri, all around the volcanic plateau, down into T-Rail. So I was involved in farming, and my brother-in-law was milking cows in Okarori, 320 cows. And so basically it was farming, and when I finished work, off to the beach. And after a couple of years of working for the dairy board, I got a bit itchy. Itchy feet. I'd already travelled a couple of times overseas. I'd worked as a jackaroo in the outbacks of Australia, and on the wheat harvest and driving trucks and stuff. And I wanted to travel again. So I sold my worldly possessions, my fencing truck, my 1952 Austin Devon with a 6-foot flat deck, my Mark II Zephyr, and my EK Holden. Whew, I had 3 vehicles, man. So I was rolling in it. Put my surfboard under my arm, my backpack on, and like most Kiwis in those days, whoever was last to leave New Zealand was to turn the lights out. That was the standard joke. And so we hit the road. My mate was from FRI, and so we shot off to Australia, up to Darwin, overland, and ended up in Indonesia. And our surfboards came to great use then. We whacked them up and were into it. Did some diving off these islands, grady fields. We used to live with the locals. Cost you about $1 a day to live up in Asia in those times, so it was quite... Yeah, they were dehusking the coconuts for copper. They'd split them and then smoke them up. Some of the locals, check the earlobes. The longer your earlobes, the better looking you were. So she was a real honey. You see all the tattoos. Amazing people, very hospitable. They'd open their home up to you and they had very little, but they'd just really make you feel at home. These were headhunters. They had human skulls hanging up in the ceilings of their houses. Singapore and down into Sri Lanka or Ceylon. You see the men used to fish off these poles here. The local brought out his Cobra. Good outboard motor there. Get a bed in the seagull, isn't it? And we just sleep on the beach here in the early morning. Didn't cost you anything then. And you could wake up, have an early morning surf. You have the crows used to come around, see if there's any food. It's a view from the lunch shop, just looking at the surf. So warm, the water was so warm and so much better to be out of a wetsuit. So we got on a 96-foot schooner and sailed harbour in Sri Lanka down through the Indian Ocean. We were 26 days at sea, so I was just one of the deckhands. Saw whales come alongside, flying fish. Some of the most spectacular sunrises. We're on the early morning watch, and so we often get the sunrises and then the sunsets. I wish you had a camera that could take the whole horizon in. You see shooting stars. Oh, it's fantastic, man. I can see why you can become a seaman. Arrived after 26 days at sea. Believe me, that seemed like a long time without seeing land. We had sea legs when we got on shore. To an island called Mauritius. The small island is just off the east coast of Africa. So we weighed anchor there and I jumped off with my surfboard into a local village called Tamarin Bay. Some of the local Creole men, fishing village. They live off the sea. And they're also very good surfers. Breaks on coral reef. It's a view from my house. In the early morning, the coral would, you'd feel the waves that was up would shake the foundations of the house because it's built on the coral. Beautiful lagoons. And then we'd dive on the outer reef, and we'd dive for octopus and shells on the inner reef. Became quite friendly with the local people, and they invited us to their parties, to their weddings. They accepted us as brothers, and we became very close. Ran out of money, and needed to go and work, so went to Africa. Got a job teaching windsurfing and water skiing in a tourist hotel. As a child, I always wanted to go to the game reserves. I always used to look at those pictures as a kid of all the wildlife. So I thought, well, we got a combi van and we went up into the Zululand, up into the national parks there. These are all wild, spectacular. Back into surfing again. So there's a place called Jeffreys Bay, renowned to be one of the best surf places in the world. That's me. In there somewhere. I was about to go overland through Africa and up into Europe and into South America. I like to go off the beaten track. But my brother wrote to me from Fremantle, my younger brother Neil, and asked me if I'd come back to New Zealand for his wedding. And he was getting married in Thames. And I thought, oh, Thames, middle of winter. Bad move. I was halfway around the world. I'd saved enough money in this tourist hotel to see the rest of the world. But I have a very close family. I love my younger brother. I've been to my sister's wedding, so I thought I'd better do the right thing. So I flew back to New Zealand, but I thought I won't arrive back in Thames. I'll have a few months in the tropics first. So another island called Reunion Island, which is just south of Mauritius. And back to Mauritius, outer reef. Again, rented this small house on the beach. And these are my Creole buddies. This is Simon, one of the most respected divers in the village, also the night diver. And my story revolves around diving with him one particular night. Just a view from our house, maybe. And we go night diving. And this would be what we'd have about 2 in the morning when we came back in from the dive. We would sell the rest of it to the tourist hotel. How many like crayfish and crab? Got any divers here? You guys divers? Any surfers? Diving. I've been diving. I was instructor in diving and when I was in South Africa, and dived on wrecks and quite a lot of places in the world, but I'd never night dived until I hit this island. And the Creoles taught me how to night dive. Anyone been night diving? You got any night divers here? Oh, I got one. Oh, that's good. People say, well, why would you want to go diving at night? You must be nuts. Well, I thought that too the first time the Creole asked me. He said, would you want to go night diving? I said, oh, you're insane. He said, oh, very good diving, huh? You come, you see something you never see before. I said, yeah. Jaws too, mate. Never see it again either. Never see you again. And so I said, oh, you come, huh? And, you know, a good fisherman always throws the bait out first. I said, what do you do out there? He said, oh, can I tell you, huh? You come, we show you, huh? So he hooked me in. I brought a diving torch and swam out with him. And he swam out through the lagoon, and we're right next to each other. I thought, well, I'm going to be a shadow. I'm going to stick real close to him. If there's any sharks out there, forget it, you know. And so he swam over the outer reef. Now, these reefs are like mountain pinnacles. They drop off 30, 40,000 fathoms. Some of the biggest game fish are caught in the world off this island, a place called Rivière Noire, or Black River. And the largest game fish ever caught. Record marlin and sharks are caught off there. So we're diving off into literally the edge of these mountain peaks. And so as we're going along, I started shining my torchlight out into the darkness. And he went, he said, oh, no good, do this, shark come for you, Okay, mate, you know, flew in. So I keep it on the reef, you know what I mean? And we're swimming along, and here is these huge crayfish right underneath me, 15 feet underneath me, right out on the reef. My torchlight hits them, and he's just diving straight on them. Picks this huge cray up, comes straight up to the surface, and they'd got a young boy from the village with just one of those small boats with a long pole, and threw it straight into the boat. Now I was clicking on. The boat was there to kind of get the crays. And the young boy was watching our torchlights. No tanks, just free diving. Now these Creoles are incredible divers that can hold their breath for a long time. So we're diving along, it's like spotlighting. You've been spotlighting, you see the possum's eyes or rabbit's eyes. As soon as the spotlight off your Land Rover or off the tractor hits them, what happens? They freeze. If you're like most of us, you know, you should be using a 22. If you're a bad shot, you got the shotgun out, you know. And if you've got a reloader, you can use it. And so it's the same thing underwater. The crayfish during the day, anyone been out there for crays during the day, you've got to get a bit of number 8 wire. Are you supposed to do that, eh? And you've got to try and pull them out of the holes, don't you? Out of the hole. Well, at night, they're scavengers. They're nocturnal. They come right out. So as soon as the torchlight hits them, they freeze. Now, so as a turkey, you know, you could just field day. Oh, there's one. Some of them were so big you'd have to spear them. You grab them and they'll grab you. Some of the crabs too were so big, you know, so strong you'd spear them. Now as I was swimming along, he pointed, and here is a parrotfish, maybe a 15-pound parrotfish, the ones that whenever you're spearfishing during the day seem to keep about a mile away from you. You know what I mean? You chase them, even with a Hawaiian lance, they're tuned in. They seem to keep away from you. But at night, here's this 15-pound parrotfish sound asleep on the reef, lying on its side. And Simon turns to me with his big smile and goes, pulls his knife out, up to it, straight into the head, up into the boat. I thought, fish are asleep too. Well, God made us to sleep, so why can't the fish have a sleep? Eyes are open, you see, but they're asleep. And we started moving the reef. Now, some of the fish were coming out. Big eyes were coming out, and were nocturnal, and different fish were working the reef. But a lot of the fish during the day that you couldn't spear fish are now sound asleep on the reef, and you could just pick which ones you wanted. So it was an incredible dive. We came in with maybe 80 cray and, I don't know, 10 or 15 huge parrotfish, a few crab, and we got them in the sacks, and we straight up to the tourist hotel, you know, and of course the cook was there, and they woke him up, and they sold it to the hotel, and we took a sack home ourselves, and it's nothing like fresh seafood. No matter how tired you are, even if it's 2 or 3 in the morning, just cook it up, and away you go. Oh, it's great stuff. So I was buying a bit of rice and a few vegetables and living like a king. They were paying $100 a day down at the tourist hotel. I was paying $100 a month for a 3-bedroom house on the beach. And I rent the other 2 rooms out, so it only cost me $30. $1 a day. It's the doctor away. And so anyhow, that was my lifestyle. That was the one I was doing. And I'd learned to travel like that, and I'd been doing it for 2 years, so I got pretty good at it. Well, this particular night, I had about a week or 10 days to go. We went out diving, and as I was diving, Simon said to me, he said, oh, we go Rivière Noire tonight, a special place. I wasn't going to go diving that night because I could see an electrical storm out at sea. And I thought, well, I don't want to, you know, the surf might come up. And there's nothing worse than having the surf come up on the reef when you dive and you get bashed up on it. And so I thought, maybe the surf's up. And he said, no, this storm missed us, Ian. Come on, we show you a very special diving spot tonight. So we rowed down. And as we're rowing down, the fluorescence in the water was amazing. As it hit the water, as you lifted the oars, it would come almost like angel dust. Just beautiful in the moonlight. It would just be, you could sprinkle it over you and you'd be covered almost like an angel dust. You know what I mean? It's amazing stuff. The fluorescence in the water. And as we're going down, we dived in. We're about half a mile off the actual island on the outer reef and about 5 miles from where I lived. As we jumped in that night, I was with there were two divers, Simon and another Creole guy and myself. The 2 other Creoles quickly jumped in and off they went. I dived in after them and made the mistake which divers should never do. We got separated. My French wasn't that good, and I thought they'd said that we were going to go up the reef. They actually had said we're going down the reef, but normally not a problem. But this night it was a serious problem. We separated, and as I was diving along, I saw in the water something that looked like this isn't a very good photo, but it was an unusual looking jellyfish. Never seen one before in my life. It was torpedo shaped and doesn't show very well, but box shaped underneath. And I didn't realize, but I just swam right up next to one of the most poisonous creatures known to man, called a box jellyfish, or a sea wasp. Aussies call them stingers. And as I swam up to it, I saw it because, you know, in the tropics you see sea snakes, scorpion fish, all kinds of stuff you've never seen in the temperate waters of New Zealand. So here I am looking at it with my leather gloves on. I reach out in fascination to see if it is a jellyfish. And sure enough, it squeezes through my hand. And I watch it swim off. Oh, that's a weird looking jelly. Oh well, a lot of things you see at night. So I kept looking for crays. So I'm looking and searching the reef. Something hits me in my forearm, and it feels like thousands of volts of electricity are going through my arm. My wetsuit came to here. I had a short sleeve vest on and what we call a long john. It was 2 mil, very thin, because it was used only to protect myself from being cut on the reef. I didn't wear it because of the temperature, but because if you nicked yourself on the reef, you wouldn't know you're bleeding. And that's the last thing you want to do, is be bleeding in the middle of the night on the outer part of the reef when you've got sharks 15 to 20 feet away from you, asleep, moving because they've got to have water going over their gills. So I wore it to protect myself, but the only exposed part of my forearms, because I had leather gloves on, and as I turned my torchlight to see, no blood. I looked to see what had hit me. I couldn't see it. And I was shining out into the never-nevers, the darks. I don't want to do that. Leave that one. And I did the next worst thing. I rubbed it, which would have rubbed the tentacles that had already gone into my arm. And the diver is also taught never panic. So I thought, well, I won't panic. I'll go and get a crayfish and I'll go back to the boat. Otherwise, the boys think I'm just panicking about nothing. By this stage, the numbness was giving me a false sense of, you know what I mean, of security, that it wasn't so bad. It felt like standing in a cow shed on wet concrete with bare feet and grabbing the electrical mains unit by mistake in the dairy. When I was in Mackenzie country on working for James Innes on Holden Station, which is across from Twizel, remember underneath the pylons coming out of Lake Benmore, the electricity it seems to leak. It leaks down on some of the fences. And so it's so dry that the actual fences are alive. And I remember accidentally coming up to the fence one day when I was working up there and touching the fence. I was thrown 2 to 3 feet through the air backwards onto the ground. Noel Shepherd said, make sure you're never hanging on to a horse when that happens. Well, my horse will never go near a fence again, son. So he said, make sure you don't grab the reins in the fence if it's gone. Otherwise, your poor horse, if it's shot, will go... Boom. So anyhow, I'm diving along. I look down and I see some crays. I don't know what stung me. I don't realise it's been these box jellyfish. And I go down and started getting these crays. Now, underwater, the torchlight is almost like a narrow beam of light. You've seen those Star Wars movies, those Jedi swords or whatever it is. A very narrow beam of light. And as I'm diving down around the head of the torch, there's a bit of a glow. And out of the dark comes these two funny-looking jellyfish moving slowly towards me. Now, if I take my torchlight off these crays, they'll go. And so I'm fixed on them. Next minute, one moves quite quickly and its tentacles brush past my forearm, get the second hit. I pull back before the second jellyfish can hit me and realise I've been hit. The first one must have been one of these funny jellies. Straight to the surface. You ever suffer from hay fever or taken antihistamines or stuff? Well, I was a real bad case as a kid. They used to give me injections once a week in Te Awamutu and swallow these things to try and keep my allergic reaction down. So I pulled back, knowing that I was the worst case to be stung by any jellyfish or whatever. I swam to the surface, thought I'm going straight back to the boat and asked the boys what this was. I'm swimming along the surface, and I get an eerie feeling like, look down, son. So I stick my head back into the water. My torchlight penetrates the dark, goes straight down, and 20, 25 feet beneath me are thousands of these funny jellyfish. It's a whole soup of them. You know how the beaches sometimes you get so many jellies, you walk in and you're getting hit by them all? Just a soup of them. And my heart comes up into my mouth, and I'm also right off the reef. So I'm right out in the deep part of the water. So I lift my torchlight up and look in the first 5 to 10 feet, and I can see them all over the place. And it's like a minefield. I thought, I need to get back to the boat. If one of these hits my face, I'm history. So I put my torch up to my face, trailed my right arm behind me, and tried to swim through them. As I was swimming through them, I got hit with another one. And I pulled my other hand up, and the water resistance is crazy. You know, if you've ever done any snorkeling, you trail your arms behind you. So I'm trying to weave through these things with both hands in front of me. I get to the boat, having been hit by 3 of them now, and pull myself up on the side of the boat and say, "Qui se fait sur la plage? Somebody hit me, brother." And the young Creole said, "Je ne comprends pas, regarde Simon." And he pointed to the other Creole diver, Simon, who was see his torch. I swam over to Simon, underwater, signaled to come up. He came to the surface. He said, "Ian, qui se fait, brother? What's happening?" I said, "Something hit me, man, in the water. Something hit me, Simon." And he said, "Get out on the reef. We have a look, huh?" And I put my head back in the water. I was about 5 feet away from the reef. I put my head back in the water, and as I did, here, coming off the reef with the surge of the water, is this jellyfish coming straight at my face. My torchlight just grabs it. It's just a reflex action. It's either my face or my forearm. So I roll in the water to protect my face and get hit a 4th time. I climb up onto the reef. It's low tide. It's about 2 foot covering the reef. I'm standing there with my flippers on. For the first time, I can actually see the damage that's been done to my arm. My arm is up like a balloon, where the tentacles have hit are like burn blisters, like you burn yourself on the stove. And they're literally like bubbled and are about to burst. And there's just traced all over them. Perspiration is pouring from me, and I can feel the poison moving up my forearm, and it actually hits me almost like, I know to be my lymphatic system. Done veterinary science at Lincoln, and it hit me right there. And I knew that I was in serious trouble because this poison was moving so quick. It was searing, burning heat. I could feel the muscle tissue almost clamping like this as the poison worked into it. It started to move into my right lung and started to constrict my breathing. So mine at this stage is out of the water, walking backwards with his flippers on, looking at me and saying, "Yeah, brother, what's wrong, huh?" And I showed him my arm, and he went, "Invisible." My limited French, fourth form French said, "Oui, invisible." He said, "Pardon, un invisible, tac, c'est funny for you, huh?" And I'm going, man. And he said, "How many, huh? How many, tac? How many?" I said, cut, 4 invisible. He said, "Impossible, impossible. Allez, allez, Petermont, 4 bons hospital, allez." You want interpretation? It's about as good as I got. Whenever a word like hospital, you know, you go hospital. Telephone, telephone, you know, invisible, invisible, you know. So he basically told me one would kill me. He said, "How come you not know, man? How come you not know?" I'm going, "Yeah, how come I not know? I just think I'm a white man, I know everything." Don't know anything, mate. So he started helping me back into the water to swim out to the boat. Now, a lot of people say, why weren't they stung? One, they knew what they were. Two, to them it was winter. They had hoods, rubber hood on, rubber gloves and booties on. They had a full steamer on and were in a 3 to 4 mil suit. We'd only been in the water maybe 5-10 minutes at the most. Now I'd been hit by 4 times the lethal dosage of enough to kill a man. These guys had lost divers from one hit, I found out later. Only one guy in the village had survived because it hit him in the shoulder. They showed me his scars on his black skin. You can see the white scarring tissue. That was a week after my accident, 3 days after my accident, and it hit his shoulder, and they got him to hospital in time. Here's a massive man. So here they are swimming back out to the boat, come up onto the side of the boat, and they start to drag me into the boat. My right arm is trailing in the water, and as they roll in, they're hit with another one. I remember rolling into the boat and saying, what have I done to deserve all this? You know what I mean? I believed in payback, didn't expect it all to come the same night in the same place. You know what I mean? Didn't think it was that bad. Well, I had a flash of the stuff I'd done. You know, seeing guys' T-shirts, been there, done that. Well, I suddenly saw all the stuff that I'd actually done. Didn't help me, I was still dying. I rolled into the boat, and they started lifting the wooden boat up onto the coral reef and dragging it over the coral and into the lagoon. These guys own this boat with a cooperative with a bunch of other men in the village. And the older men in the village, the fishermen, if they scratch that boat, they're in big trouble. They usually go through the break in the lagoon, through the channel. Here they are dragging it over and ripping the guts out of it over the coral reef with me in it and this young boy. And I said, "Simon, the boat, brother, you wrecked the boat, huh?" He said, "Not worry for boat, huh? You die." Flag the boat. This guy is fearless. He is the most respected man in the village. By nature, the Creoles are afraid of the dark. And spiritually, they're into voodoo. So here we are, this guy telling me, because he loved me, he'd die for me, I'd die for this man, telling me that I was dead. Got into the lagoon and pushed off. And I'm going, "Simon, come with me, man." He said, "Cannot, too heavy, huh? Too heavy, no motor. Go, the young boy, go quick for you. Let him go, take you." And I'm going, "Simon, how for my arm? How can I help my arm?" He said, "Pee on your arm, man. Urinate on your arm." Well, when you get told to urinate on your own arm, you know things are pretty serious. I ripped my wetsuit off because the constriction was already coming from just the wetsuit around my chest. I ripped it off and got into and tried to pee on my own arm, totally dehydrated. I'd already dehydrated from the poison in my system, and I couldn't. Now, have you ever been snorkeling? You get a terrible taste of snorkel, the rubber in your mouth. And like good divers, you wash it down with water or Coke or whatever, get rid of the taste. Well, we always dive in the bow of the boat. We had a bottle of water, you know, just an old Coke bottle full of water. And I downed it. There was one there. I downed it, and immediately perspiration just poured off me, but I was able to urinate on my arm, and I rubbed it in. Maybe that did something, but because it was And so I did it, got changed in my sweats. I got sinuses, so I couldn't smell anything. Got changed in my sweats and headed for shore. Halfway to shore, I felt the poison move down. I felt like someone had smashed me in my kidneys as the poison hit the lower part of my body and started to take out my right leg. Got to shore and tried to stand up, and my entire right side was paralyzed and I collapsed in the bottom of the boat. The young Creole boy came to the side of the boat, motioned for me to put my arm around his neck. I grabbed my paralyzed arm, and he dragged me out of the boat, up this coral beach, up onto the main road through the coconut trees. People do supernatural things. This kid should not have been able to get me up there, but he did it. Got up onto the road, and I thought, how am I going to get to the hospital? And next minute, a car comes screaming down the road, and his headlights reflect back off our bodies into his face. It's a Frenchman. He sees a white boy with a black boy, and he thinks, scam, hold up, I'm leaning against him, or they're drunk, or it's going to be, And he changes gear, goes off onto the verge, grass verge, and takes off. You understand the hatred in that part of the world. The fact that I actually hung out with the Creoles, the Chinese rejected me, the Indians, the French, and the English would have nothing to do with me, because I would associate with the Creoles, the blacks. I've got news for you, folks. God doesn't look at the colour of your skin. There's good, bad, and ugly out there in every race. It's in your heart. These guys could look into a man's eyes and tell whether you look down on them, whether you hated them, and without even speaking, they could sum you up. Well, I didn't have an ounce of prejudice bone in me, I don't think. I was raised up in Rotorua. Rotorua boys high. You had to stay alive, mate. You had to nail someone before they nailed you. Someone bumped you on a Friday night down the main street. You made sure you looked around to see where the cousins were in case you hit the wrong boy. Anyone with me? And I was the blue-eyed blonde, so I was a walking target 90% of the time. But God knows. He's got a sense of humour. So here I am. You know what I mean? Seeing my life kind of disappear off in this car and the Frenchman. Now, that's a long story. My wife's looking at me going, you're going in great detail. And I was going to try and make it shorter tonight, but we're just going to have to go with what happens. You got the time? I got the time. Okay, got plenty of time. My auntie's up here, she's got plenty of time. So here I am, leaning up against this young kid, and I get so tired and so weak that I sit down on the road. The young Creole boy points and starts pointing back to the sea and saying, mon frère, sur la plage. And I'm going, no, ambulance, telephone, police. I'm trying to think of something. And he takes off on me, because his brother and my friend Simon are out on the reef, standing in 2 foot of water with no boat. He takes off in fear. I'm sitting on the road, and the poison is starting to really take me out, and I feel like sleeping. I don't realise, but I'm slipping into a coma. I start to lie down on the road, and I'm staring up into the heavens there, and thinking all I should do is have a sleep, and maybe I'll think about it in a minute. I'm about to close my eyes, and the clear voice speaks and says, son, if you close your eyes, you shall never awake again. Well, it shook me into reality. I said, who spoke that? And I look around, it was so clear, no one was speaking, but I heard the voice. I thought, you can't, and then it clicked me, someone slap you in the face, wake you up. As a lifeguard with a surf bronze from Hawaii Beach, if someone got stung by a blue bottle, you sometimes have to slap them, keep them awake, to fight it until you could treat them. So here I am as a qualified lifeguard, about literally to slip into a coma and not even realise it was that sudden. Most people would have died right there. In Australia, over 60 people have died in Darwin alone from one sting. I believed, had I not heard what I now know to be the voice of God then, I would be dead. Right there on the road, 10 to 15 minutes after the initial sting, dead. I was in my prime physical condition. I'd been instructing windsurfing and jet skiing and water skiing for an entire year at that stage. But it nearly killed me. I shook off the poison, shook off the sleepiness, and thought, I've got to get to a hospital. So I tried to walk, and I stood to my feet. My left leg was still okay, my right leg was completely paralyzed, but I hobbled down the road looking for some kind of a house, some kind of light on anywhere, because I was going to bang on the window and get some help. I saw a Caltex sign or a gas station just up by these bougainvillea, and I hobbled up there, and I went around the corner. To my amazement, 3 East Indians and 3 cars. In Mauritius, that means 3 taxis. They're doing it at night, scamming. So I went over towards them, leaned up against the old Datsun, and these 3 Indians looked at me and said, "What's wrong with you? Aren't you drunk?" I said, "Hospital. Please take me hospital, or I die." They said, "I cannot have French client in restaurant, cannot." And I looked and I could see a small hole in the wall kind of restaurant amongst the coconut trees. I said, "Look, I give you money." "Oh, how much money you give us?" The magic word there, boy. Money. You can see the dollar signs blink through their eyes. Money. And I said, "I give you $50, $100 US. I'll just give it to you. Take me hospital, please." They said, "Show us money, and then we take you, brother." I said, "No money, You don't carry 50 US in your back pocket when you're night diving." The moment I said no, it was as though they just walked. They just walked off laughing, lit up a fag, just thought it was a big joke, wandered off. And here I am, watching these men walk away because I've told them the truth, I've got no money. I hear the voice speak again, "Ian, are you willing to beg for your life?" I thought for a moment, yep, and it's mostly the only thing that'll get these guys to take me to the hospital. I'd been in Africa and seen the Zulu and the Umfolozi, Shisui tribes do this to white boys. "Yes, some boss. Yes, some master." I thought, well, I know how to do that. My left leg had gone, so I dropped to the ground in front of these Indians, lifted my paralysed right hand up, cupped it, bowed my head, and begged for my life. These Indians would never have seen that in their entire life. But that was the word of God for me to save my life. And I could see 2 of them walk away, and the other young Indian was undecisive because I had my eyes open as I was pleading for it, and I could see his feet moving, and eventually he moved over towards me, helped me up to my feet, put me into his car, and we took off. Halfway to the hospital, he's saying, "Oh, where you pay my money, Where you pay my money?" And I'm going, "Flag, look, I'll give it to you. Just don't worry, settle down." And then he kept hassling me. He said, "Where you live?" I said, "Tamarin Bay." He said, "Oh, you stay Tamarin Bay Hotel?" I said, "No, I rent house, bungalow." He said, "How come you lied to me, How come you lied to me? You're tourist." I said, he said, "I drop you at hotel." I'm going, "No, man, hospital, I give you the money." Comes right up to the turn-off. Hospital is up there, another 5 miles, hangs a left down to a 3-star Chinese hotel in Tamarin Bay. Pulls right out in front of it. This is the village I live in. Pulls out right in front of it, and he says, "Get out of my taxi." I said, I tried to lift my left leg. I couldn't at this stage. He said, "Get out." And I said, "Look, I can't. Please take me to hospital." And he undid my safety belt and shoved me up against the pillar of the door. He said, "Get out." He was getting quite aggro. I said, "I can't." He leaned over, undid my passenger door, and he just shoved me straight out the door. I remember hitting the ground, looking up to see him try and shut the passenger side, but he couldn't because my feet were caught in the door sill. So he cupped my feet up in his hands, and he threw them onto the ground and looked me straight in the eye, closed the door, and drove off. I remember at that point in my life thinking, if that's how fellow man treats fellow man for $50 miserable, what's the point in living? Who wants to live in this hellhole anyhow? Your number's up, close your eyes, do the world a favour, do yourself a favour and die. I mean, I had no reason. What's the point in living? I lay there contemplating, just giving it up. If your number's up, go. Yet I remember just in a split second, my granddad. Granddad had fought in 2 world wars, and he got taken out, I think his 3rd or 4th heart attack at Waihi Beach. He's walking down to his Mark I console. My grandma, I think, looking out the window. He dropped dead right there on the spot when I was 14 years of age. And here I am complaining about a few miserable jellyfish stings. He's gone through 2 world wars, mustard gas, Gallipoli, Monte Cassino and El Alamein, I think, just a few. And here I am complaining about it. And I thought, well, this I'm also Irish and Scottish, great mixture, and on a few others too. This arm's working, so I grabbed the grass, and I thought, might as well try until you die. And I started dragging myself along in this part asphalt, part grass kind of car park towards the hotel entrance. As I'm dragging myself along the ground, torchlight shines on me, and I can hear a familiar voice of one of my drinking buddies, Danielle. He going, "Oh, Ian, what you doing, brother? How come you on the ground, man? You're so out of it. What you been on, huh?" But here I am, you know what I mean? And he runs over, and I'm sick of trying to tell him the story, so I just pull my sweatshirt up, show them my arm. And he looks, and he says, "Invisible." I went, "Oui." He said, "Impossible." I said, "Invisible, pas bon. Invisible, tac, c'est fini for you." And I'm going, man, heard it, they already heard that. And then he said, "You dive with Simon tonight at Le Mans." I said, "Oui." "Rivière Noire." I said, "Oui." He said, "Pas bon." And he scooped me up in his arms and raced me into the hotel. The tourists had gone to bed, the bar was closed, and the Chinese that owned it, the 3 Chinese guys were playing poker or mahjong or something and drinking whiskey in one of their chairs. I was dropped in this rattan chair about 15 feet away from them by Danielle, and Danielle disappears off into the darkness. I'm thinking, why is Danielle not telling them? Then I realised, black man speaks to Chinese man, lack of respect, lose job. That's the pecking order. It's not right, but that's the pecking order in that country. And if I don't speak to these Chinese boys, he hasn't got the right to speak. They look at me and said, "What's wrong with you?" I said, I showed them my arm. He said, "You drunk or something?" I said, "No, my arm." And the young Chinese boy stood up. He said, "Oh, look, good for you, huh? How come you put the needle in the arm, huh? The white boy, silly boy, huh? So you put the old man, we use the opium, huh? The pipe. How come you put the needle in the arm, huh? Sorry, huh? Silly boy, huh? Sorry, sit down." And the Chinese boy thought I was mainlining or putting home bake or smack into my arm. The only time I put a needle on my actual body was when I was on the farm and hit a bone on the cow when I was trying to save from milk fever, and it went the dig, I got the lump there still, went straight into the bone. You can learn all you like at university, but until you actually get out there and do this stuff, you don't know anything. You know what I'm saying? Hitch up the front end loader. Huh? Put on the carriage hook. Huh? You know, you don't know anything. You need the practical apprenticeship stuff, you see. And so here I am, being told I'm shooting up heroin. Well, my body starts to go into muscular contractions. My entire body starts to go in spasms as the poison starts to move through me, and my jaw starts smashing up into my teeth, and every part of my body starts to go out as the poison starts to hit me. They start to jump out of their seats and try and hold me down physically. I'm throwing them off. And as the shakes go, they then start putting blankets over because I'm shivering cold. The old Chinese man opens my mouth and pours a glass of milk down. He must have thought it's poison, and here's what he was thinking. I didn't ingest it, it was in my blood system. So here I am shaking, and the shaking goes, and I get a deathly cold, ice-cold feeling over my body, clammy feeling. And then as I'm sitting there, I can feel in my bone marrow, right in my toes, moving up through my ankles to my shins, I feel ice-cold death gripping the core of my bone marrow. And I'm not stupid. I know that is that's the actual centre of your blood system. You know what I mean? Producers. I think was it white blood or one of those? Red blood, I don't know. But anyhow, it's one of those. 10 years since I studied all that. But it's the core of your body is dying. It's like the core of who you are is starting to die. And as I'm sitting there, I'm looking, going, I need to get out of here. I look into the car park and I see a Renault 4, a little old car, and I know that this Chinese boy owns it. I used to hitchhike. And I remember him going past me plenty of times, tooting and waving. Never toot and wave at a hitchhiker. Just pretend you didn't see them. Well, I knew this boy, and I looked at the car, I looked at him. Here's the one who told me I was mainlining. He was about a foot away from me, and I looked into his eyes and said, "Please, your car, hospital, or I die here." And he looked at me, back in my eyes, he put his hand on my shoulder, he said, "Oh, white boy, huh? No, my car cannot lie. We wait for ambulance for you, huh? How come you're so worried, huh? I'm too worried for you, huh? We wait for ambulance for you, huh?" This hand here was still working. I still had a forehead. I mean, I was tempted to reach up with my last ounce of strength and give him a headbutt. My dying move. You ever felt like doing that? Ever work in a cow shed? Never hit a cow. Guess who wins? Not your hand. So here I am, wanting to do it, but I know if I did it, the adrenaline rush would mostly kill me. So I controlled it, controlled my anger and my fantasy of taking his lights out, and try to steer straight ahead. I'm just hanging in here, and Danielle appears with another security buddy, gently moves these Chinese guys out of the way, throws me over their arms, scoops me up, and races off past the swimming pool towards the hotel entrance. I'm going, what's going on here? Next minute I see an ambulance come screaming into the car park, and I see the headlights hit the 4-foot wall, reflect back into his face, a Frenchman driving. I see Frenchmen think they're in Grand Prix or something. They're so impatient. And he changes down the first gear. You could see his headlights miss us. We're in the shade of a coconut tree halfway across to the entrance, and you could see him look, and I could almost read his thoughts. Oh, Creoles must have been stoned tonight, off their faces, a false alarm, there's no one here. I'm going back up to the hospital. So he just changes into second, and off he goes. I'm slung between the two of these guys, watching this ambulance going off around down the De La Rue, off back to the hospital. And I'm going, I'm trying to whistle. Have cotton mouth? Some of you have, you can see it. Dehydrated, can't whistle. Can't whistle. Danielle clues in, lets me go, does this huge wolf whistle, and sprints, jumps the 4-foot wall, and heads off down the road after him. Now, this guy is big. Danielle's a big boy. And if he couldn't stop him with a whistle, I knew that if he grabbed it, he'll grab this little thing, you know. This is their village. Police are scared to come into this village. He backs up. The ambulance guy, maybe that's why I didn't want to stop too. The ambulance guy backs up because Danielle stops him, and I'm slung in the arms of this other Creole. The ambulance driver leans over, opens the door, and here's another Renault 4 with the front seat ripped out and the cam stretcher going from the front seat to the back seat. This is the ambulance. They drop me in, my head hits the back seat, and off we go. Saw that young guy waxing up, Michelle waxing up his board in front of that huge mountain pinnacle. On the edge of that ridge is where the World War II British Army Hospital is, given to the Creoles after the war. We start climbing. My feet are in the front seat, and my head's in the back seat, and the poison is located about here, geographically. And as we start climbing, I have a massive rush of poison coming into my lungs, my heart, and then hitting my head and starting to take me out. If they'd used their scone, they would have had my head in the front seat, my feet in the back seat to keep the poison away from me. And here I am, and I nearly die right there. I remember coming right up onto the edge of death, and I started to see my life go before me. Snowy-headed little boy, I didn't even know what it was, and I didn't even know what I'd seen until I started recognising a bit older who it was. I didn't realise that was me until I could see a bit older. And then my life flashed before me. I thought, I've seen it on the idiot box, and that's incredible. You know, your life flashes before you cark it. And so here I am watching this go in front of me. And then I see my mother praying for me. Now, when you have someone praying for you and you see that in the vision, I'm telling you, you're scared. And I did a mental check. I'm nearly dead. My mother is saying, Ian, no matter how far from God you are, if you cry to God from your heart, God will hear you and God will forgive you. My mother told me that when I was 14 years old in St. Luke's, when I got confirmed as an Anglican in Rotorua. I remember going up to communion there, and you know, they kneel at the rail there and they give you this stuff of bread and this big chalice thing, silver thing. I remember them giving it to me. My brother was next to me. We got given the bread, and it felt like cardboard, blotting paper. Then the chalice came along, and as I looked at my brother, he went first, and he smiled when the priest passed it to me. But what's he smiling about? He gooby back in it or something, you know. I was making sure the minister had wiped the edge of the thing there. He was having a big chuckle to himself, the young rat. What did you do to him? You know, don't trust younger brothers. And so I remember having the rush, but it was a warm rush of wine, which I'd never had before. We had shandies, but never had wine, going down. I remember walking out of there. I expected to meet God. 14-year-old boy, I think I had a faith. I think I had a belief of some kind. And it all seemed to compile up to this confirmation thing. I was so disappointed and so disillusioned, I found the church was just stand up, sit down, and kneel. And whether I wonder if they'd remember to change the number that was up on the wall, whether it was last month's or last week's. I remember walking out of there, and we used to count the bore and the pillars. We were so bored. Our standing joke is if you clap loud enough, the bore will let go, hands close the rest, and the thing will go down in a cloud of dust. Now, I'm joking, but that's how I was. You've got to hear my heart. I'm trying to tell you how I was, and God has done a work since then. But that's how I thought. And I used to think, Dad said, ministers, well, they're the guys that can't get a job, man. So my dad said, he said, they can't get a job, that's why they go to church and work at church. He said, you only have to shake their hands, and you can feel it's like a wet fish or something. So you want someone to shake your hand, you get someone who can shake your hand, and you crush them before they, you know what I mean? So these guys are like... So this is my understanding of religion and Christianity. It's for women. Let the woman go and pray. We're brought up to be man's men, you know. You don't like someone, you tell them. They're bigger than you, you don't. The running shoes on. I walked out of there, thought this is a load of rubbish. I'm not going back and be a hypocrite, I'm out. I was the only kid still going to church, all the rest was surfing, off their face even at that age. I walked out, and there's my dad standing there. I thought, well, I'll go and ask him. I walked up to him and said, Dad, have you ever heard God speak to you? I said, what? I looked at the ground. I said, well, obviously he hasn't, you know. And I looked at him, I said, Dad, we're told here at church that God's created us in his image. I have got eyes, ears, a mouth, and a mind. Why is it that if we're created in God's image, when I talk to him in prayer, why isn't he doesn't speak back to me? Deaf or something? Isn't that a real question? I was 14 years old. I wanted to know, if there's a God, he can speak. Why isn't he talking? I'd never been told in the Bible or read that the thing that separates us from hearing God isn't because God can't hear. It's our sin and the evil, wicked stuff we've done that separates us from even talking back to us. If you get rid of your sin and repent, then he'll start talking to you, right? In fact, the first thing God will talk to you about is about cleaning up house, cleaning up your act, doing the spring clean. That's what God said. You repent, then you'll start hearing my voice real clear. You walk in darkness and keep sinning like you're doing, I won't speak. I'll wait till you're sick of it and turn. Now, I'm here, didn't know any of this. My dad didn't know anything because he's not, you know, he knew nothing of this. He never read a Bible like me. I don't even think he owned one. And he looked at me and he said, well, I don't think God speaks. Some people do. But just be a good boy. Don't buck the system and you'll make it up there. Well, I was 14. You buck everything. You buck everything, Jack. You know, wake up. You're full of rebellion. You're into everyone's face. What's this? Why do you do that? What do you... You don't know what you're doing. You know, I've been here. And so here I am. And I thought, well, Dad doesn't know, so I'll go over to Mum. I wandered over to Mum. Mum was standing next to the Anglican minister. And I strolled over there and thought, well, Mum might know. Something different about Mum. So I wandered over to Mum and said, Mum, have you ever heard God speak to you? The minister, whoop, gone. He hasn't heard either. Turned to Mum. Mum turned around to me and said, why do you ask that here? And I said, well, what's the point of coming to church unless there's a real God? Is it just this tooth fairy or Santa Claus kind of stuff? Oh, sorry, kids. But you know what I mean? It's just off with the fairies. Is this stuff real or isn't it? And my mum looked at me and she said, I've heard God speak. I went, what? When? When have you heard God speak? She said, you remember my mother, your grandmother? She had an accident in the Humber or something down in Pyro, and she was hospitalised. She hit a bull or something, and over a few years, she died slowly in a hospital. Just before she died, I had no one to turn to, and I went to my bedroom and cried out to God and asked him if he was real for him to show himself to me, and he did, and he spoke to me. I know that God is real, and I've experienced His presence. And I said, well, what does that mean, Mum? Does that mean the only way I'll ever come to God is by going through a tragedy like you did? Why is the church full of ex-alcoholics or people that can't make it in life? You know, Dad says that everyone in the church has got crutches. The only reason why is because they can't make it in the real world. I said, why is the church full of people who are broken and smashed up, ex this and ex that? Why can't you just have normal people in the church? The Mum looked at me and she said to me, she said, son, by nature man's very proud. And it often takes a tragedy or an accident to humble him before he will turn and call out to God. She said that's why the church is full of men that have been broken, because they've been too proud to humble themselves. I said, I'm not proud. And I've done nothing wrong. I'm a good boy. Well, I was 14. Can't have done too many things wrong. And I said, I'm not going to come anymore. I'm going surfing. And I'm walking away. Literally, when I said something, I'd do it. So I'm walking away. My mother looked at me and she said, Ian, can you do one thing? I said, what is it? She said, well, me and my dad, your dad, we weren't going to force you to believe in anything. We're going to give you the choice. You're old enough to make your choice. But I want you to think of this one thing. So what is it, Mum? She said, no matter what you do in your life, no matter how far from God you may find yourself, if you cry to God from your heart, God will hear you and forgive you. So now here I am, 24 years old, lying in an ambulance, inches away from death, going up a hill, seeing my mother speaking the same words and asking me to cry out to God. I remember doing it over those period of 10 years and using God like a crutch and then saying, oh, that was just luck, or that was just by chance, or whatever, had a few other names, Hindu names. And here I am, seeing my mother praying for me. My next question was, which God? I just travelled through Southeast Asia, which God? And here my mother has only ever prayed to Jesus, Christian God. And I thought, what prayer do you pray just before you die to God as Christian? Because I want to make peace. I thought, I'd remember the movies, you know, that guy, the priest would come with water or something and do a cross over them. I thought, well, there's none of them around. And I thought the ambulance driver, I asked him to pray for me, but my French wasn't good enough. So I thought, it's just me and God. There's no one else left. It's just me and God. And I thought, what prayer? My mother taught me the Lord's Prayer. Have you ever prayed that one? The Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name prayer. I tried to pray it, my mind went blank. You've been in an exam room and your mind goes blank? My mind went totally blank. If there's a God, help me pray the only prayer that I know that's Christian. And to my mind came part of the Lord's Prayer. And the first part said, forgive us our sins. And I said, God, I have committed so many sins in my life, I don't think it's possible for you to forgive me of all my sins. My conscience, I know too well what I've done wrong, behind closed doors and in darkness. I know what I've done. I said, God, if you can forgive me, forgive me. Next part of the prayer came, forgive those who have sinned against you. I thought, what does that mean? Forgive people who have backstabbed you, ripped you off? Felt God say yes. I said, oh, it's easy to do. I forgive people that have hurt me, abused me. I'm not vengeful or vindictive. I'd rather walk away from it. I said, God, I can forgive them. Next minute I saw a picture of the Indian taxi driver that had pushed me out of his car that night. And the voice said, can you forgive him? Before I had a chance to think too much about him, I had the face of this Chinese boy who wouldn't take me in his car and was patting me on the shoulder saying, we wait for an ambulance for you, huh, white boy? And the voice said, you forgive him? Well, I wasn't planning to. I had plans for these two young lads. And one of them wasn't, bless you, my son. You hear my heart? I'm trying to tell you, this is what I was like. And here I am, looking at it, and I thought, my thought was, this is where the rubber meets the road. This isn't some kind of head trip. This is real stuff. You going to forgive these boys or not? I wasn't planning to. I was deadly serious. One of them was going to end up in the swimming pool, and I was going to have my aqua lung on. He's going to be tied to his taxi and going, oh, sorry, love. Oh, no air for you, huh? I'm a good McCormack, aren't I? They used to fight and argue over the table. I mean, argue over anything. But I still do. No, I don't. God's changing my heart. I mean, He's had to. As I'm lying in there, the next part of the prayer came. I said, God, I forgive them. That's a big thing. I forgive them. Next part of the prayer came, my will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Now, what does that mean? I've been my own boss for 24 years. That means I've got to bow down and let God be, you know, in control. I'm proud of my independence. I'm proud of my self-sufficiency. I don't need anyone. I could get no more of the prayer until I literally humbled my heart and was willing to bow the knee and say, God, you take over. Your will be done. Prayed the whole of the Lord's Prayer and felt peace that I'd made peace with God. The ambulance door opened, they lifted me into a wheelchair and raced me into the hospital. Nurse pulled my sleeve up, put this thing on, pumped it up, and wondered what she's doing. And then she pumped it up, she looked at the machine and shook it. She looked at me, she hit the mercury. What's she doing? It's like a blood pressure machine, it's not working. So she rips it off, opens the cupboard, pulls another one out, shoves it on, pumps it up, and hits that too. And I'm thinking World War II equipment, you know. Here I'm dying, they've got the stuff's puckaroo, you know, it's not working here. So I'm looking at it, and the nurse looks at me and just staring into my eyes that this thing isn't working. And I'm thinking maybe it's my heart's not working. My spirit is about to float away. You hear people talking about floating away, looking at their bodies. I had no intention of floating away. I knew that this would not be an astral projection, hallucinogenic, a magic mushroom, a datura, or a blue meanie kind of disappearing act. This was a one-way ticket out of body, and it was death, and it was poison in the body. It wasn't some drug called poison. It was called poison that was going to kill me, and if I left my body, I may never come back. I had no plans of floating away out of this young boy's body. I love life. Some people like to die. I enjoyed life. I had no plans to die. I had no wish to die. But I used to go up to the edge, press this, you know what I mean? And here I am, looking at this nurse. The nurse is looking at me, and we're staring at each other, and I'm almost saying, hurry up, lady. The ambulance driver realizes the nurse has lost it, rips it off himself, pushes it to one side, and races me through to the doctors. 2 Indian doctors. Neither of them look at me. And they say, Quel âge est-il? Où est la habite? In French, like, where do you live? How old are you? And I'm going, look up. Eventually he looks up. Idiot. Looked at the older guy. He's got grey hair, maybe he speaks English. I didn't know if I could speak at this point. I looked at him and said, I am nearly dead. You ever given someone a real heavy eyeball look? Ever locked on someone and looked down their tonsils into, you know? I looked at this old doctor and I locked straight onto his eyeballs, and I thought, this boy is going to get the heaviest. And I said, I am nearly dead. I've been stung by 5 cut, invisible jellyfish. I need antitoxins now or I'm dead. The nurse came screaming in. He looked at one blood pressure result, looked at the other, screwed him in his hand, looked at the young doctor like, you moron, threw it at his face like, read those, kid, ran straight towards me, this old man, pushed the ambulance driver out of the way, grabbed my wheelchair and screamed off down the corridor yelling orders. I came racing into the small room. The next minute the old doctor dived in front of me on his knees and said, son, I don't know if you can hear me or understand me. I'm going to try and save your life. Now keep your eyes open. Well, I heard that way back on the road. I needed matchsticks. I had nurses all around me, filling up injections. The old doctor said antitoxins for the poison. 4 nurses shot injections in my 2 arms. Another drip feed went in here. Another nurse was crouched at my knee, smashing my hand like this. Another nurse was behind her with this huge syringe going, which we use on the farm for horses. And I'm looking and going, it's not for me. It gets passed down the line, and I'm going, what's she slapping my hand for? Next minute, she starts to lift my skin up and starts to try and shove it in here. She's so nervous I can see her shaking. Eventually, she gets it into what looks to be a vein. She starts to squeeze it in, and I see my vein blow up like a bubble. And it starts to fill up to about here. I'm expecting the thing to burst. I could see her so nervous that the needle was going either side of my blood vessel. The nurse was filling up a second one. The doctor nods, passes it down the line, shoves it in. It comes up like here. I'm watching this, feeling nothing. Thank God. And the nurse goes, looks worried at the doctor. The doctor's trying to control it. He goes, third one goes in, comes right up to here. Huge bubble. I'm expecting it to burst and just blow over their face. This nurse now tries to massage it up into my blood system, and she can't get it to move past my wrist, and it's rolling off her thumb and forefinger as she's trying to physically move it up into my blood system. I'm sitting there having done a degree and looking at my body at the point where I now know my blood systems are collapsing, my heart is beating so low that they can't move it. It's stuck between valves in my veins. Doesn't help you to know and be an intellectual how you're going to die. Doctor looked me in the eye and said, son, that's all we can do for you. They brought the wheelchair over to this recovery bed. The orderlies lifted me up and stuck me on the bed. I lay there with my hands spread out, the drip feed in here, and staring up at the lights in the ceiling. As I'm staring up, I'm thinking, I'm going to keep my eyes open all night, as the doctor said and that voice has said on the road. I am not going to die. I'm going to fight this thing. I'm going to stay awake. Perspiration started to pour onto my forehead and drain into my eyes and blur my vision. And my mind went, call the doctor and you'll come and sponge it. My lips won't move. Paralysis had set in to like lockjaw. I couldn't move. Lift your arm. I tried to lift either arm so I could at least wipe my eye and so the doctor would come in time to sponge my head. My arms wouldn't move. Tilt your head. I tried to tilt my head to the right or to the left. My head would not move either way. I couldn't get it to move. I thought, don't panic. Squeeze your eyes one at a time, just with your eyelids. And so I'm trying to squeeze. It's getting heavier and heavier. I can feel the poison and paralysis moving in the back of my eyelids and making it so heavy to lift up. It's working but not clearing properly. And I then remember shutting my eyes and thinking, I'm just going to sleep on this for a second, breathing a sigh of relief and going. I remember such a release, I felt like the battle's over. I don't have to fight anymore. I had no idea that my spirit, who I am inside, had actually gone. I thought I'd closed my eyes and gone to sleep. I did not know that I'd died, and I was pronounced clinically dead for over 15 to 20 minutes and came back into my physical body, having been in the presence of God, in a morgue, on a slab, with a doctor treating me like a corpse about to slide me into an icebox. Believe me, when he saw me, he had a shock. So if you can bear with me these 15 minutes, I'm sorry it's taken a long time, but if you bear with me, I'll try and explain. Words, physical words don't explain. Natural words, what I saw, but I'll try. I thought I'd gone to sleep, that I'd closed my eyes, and then I'm lying in this hospital, and I'm thinking next minute I open my eyes again. You know, you can go to sleep and not know how long you've been to sleep for, especially when you hit those snooze alarm things. We accidentally turn them off. Well, here I am thinking I'm asleep, and I've just woken up, except I feel like I've woken up in a, you know, if you go and stay at a friend's house and you wake up and you need to go somewhere in the middle of the night and you're not in your own home, it's a bit confusing. I felt like I was in a pitch black room standing next to my hospital bed and wide awake in the middle of the night, as though I'd gone to sleep and woken up. It seemed like in a split second. And I thought, why did the idiot doctors turn the lights out? Why did they move me to another room while I was asleep and turn the lights out and leave me in a dark room? That's enough to scare anyone to death. But I'm a night diver, so you're taught not to panic, and I'm not afraid necessarily of the dark. So I looked around thinking, well, I'll get my eyes accustomed to the dark. You know, even in a dark room you see some kind of light. So I'm looking around, Can't see a thing. I said, okay, I'll get the light switch. So I'm creeping over, making sure that I don't trip over. You know, you don't want to trip over anything. So I got my foot out there, can't find a wall. Thought, that's crazy. Maybe they put me in the hospital ward. Maybe I'm in the main ward and I'm walking down the middle. Trip over a bedpan or something. So I thought, you should have thought about that before. Go back to your hospital bed. Next to the hospital bed, they have those little lampstands next, always, you know what I mean? Next to the bed. So I'm creeping back to where my bed should be, and I can't find my bed. I thought I've been this way before. I've been past here. I've lost my bed now. That's great. Lost the bed. Can't see a thing. So I'm groping around the dark trying to touch something physical. I thought it's so dark in here you can't even see your hand in front of your face. So I lifted my hand up towards my face and it passed straight through. Missed your head. Both hands. Great hospital, go to sleep, no head. Happens. Started bringing my hands up towards my head and it passed straight through. And I went for any part of my body. But you got to bear with me. I've shared this maybe 1,000 times. If I'm joking, it's not mocking or being stupid before God. I just got to do it to keep myself in some kind of interest level. You know, you got to really help me. But this is how I was feeling. I couldn't touch my body, and I'm going, where is it? And my next thought was, where am I? And I'm starting to stand and feel the dark isn't just physical, but there is an evil presence in the darkness. You ever felt like someone's watching you when you're walking home at night? Or you ever felt like something moved through your room when you're asleep, or something invisible trying to choke you, or an oppression on you, or a presence of darkness or evil that's there, that's literally seeking to take your life? Now I could start to sense in this darkness something looking at me. And you ever been in a bar and you're standing there having your jug, and then you turn around and look to the guy next to you, and you catch eyes with him, and you realise it was the biggest mistake of your life? I'm sorry I ever looked. I like my face, I love you. You know, this guy just wants to hit. You've been in that situation where he just wants to hit someone. He doesn't care who you are. The fact that you even looked at him, that's enough to have your lights punched out. So here I am standing in this darkness, sensing that kind of evil. And I then, as I'm standing here, a voice over here said, "Shut up!" I said nothing. I backed off. A voice said, "Shut up! You deserve to be here." I said, "Deserve to be where?" Another voice said, "Shut up! You're in hell." You know? And I'm going, I got tuned in. If I had arms, I would have gone like that, because I had three people standing there telling me to shut up, that I was in hell and I deserved to be there. And I used to think hell was, "You beaut, here I come." Oh! Join my mates, party time. Oh, you know. In those years it was cars and talking heads. Devo. We were devos. Degenerates. Here I am thinking literally that hell was party time. Pretty hard to grab your bong. Can't find your mouth, boys. Pretty hard to grab your stubby. Can't find your head. You can't grab anything physical. And there weren't little fellas running around with little horns coming out of their heads and tails and pitchforks going or rotting maggots crawling over rotting flesh. Your body is back in the morgue or wherever you died. Ash to ash, dust to dust. That's where your body is, but your spirit has gone. And I'm standing in a pitch black hole, and I'm being told I'm in hell, and that I deserve to be there. I know I deserve to be there, but I thank God that I had a deathbed prayer in the ambulance, because God showed me later it's the only thing that saved my life. He said, "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death and deep darkness, yet shall I fear no evil, for thou art with me." And God had taken me through that, because as I stood there, a beam of light shone on me and drew me out of the pit of darkness. People say, "How come you went to hell?" Well, God wanted to show me where I should have gone. If I'd stayed there, I'd have been judged. but I didn't. Remember, judgment, Hades, is emptied into the lake of fire. It's a second death. People said, I'm not afraid of dying. No, I wasn't afraid of dying either. But where's your spirit going? It's not the death of a physical body, it's the death of your spirit. And the second death is the lake of fire. But those who come to God through Jesus Christ, the Son of God, pass out of death and into life. They can have eternal life with Him. I am taken up in a beam of light and enter this massive tunnel. And as I enter this massive tunnel, I look down the end of this tunnel, and there is the source of the light. It's literally, it felt like it was a speck of dust being drawn up into this huge opening. Narrow is the passageway that leads to the kingdom of heaven, if you find it. Broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many find it. There's a highway that leads to hell, and many people go down it. They say, no, it's the same, hasn't changed, it's a load of garbage anyhow. I don't believe it, I'm not scared of hell. You're in there, Jack, you found out. But there's a narrow road that gets into the kingdom of God, if you find it. I always think of a drafting gate when you're sheeping. You're going to be a cast for age youth. You know who the shepherd is? God. Who are we? The sheep. And I'm coming down this tunnel, and as I look at the end of it, a wave of light breaks off the tunnel and starts moving up towards me. And it moves straight through me. Total warmth and comfort begins to flood through me. And I'd had so much false comfort that this was incredible, the comfort that flooded through me. I came further down, and another wave of light broke off the source and came up as if to greet me. As it went through me, total peace. I looked for peace of mind from the top shelf, I mean every shelf, looking down every pathway looking for peace, some kind of inner peace or peace of mind. And pure peace went straight through me. I was amazed that this light was giving off an emotion and was living. I felt incredible peace wash through me. From the tip of my head to the base of my toe, it was like a wave of peace hit me and seemed to just almost pass through me, but yet the peace would stay with me. I then thought, now I'm in the light, I wonder what my body looks like. In the darkness, I couldn't see or touch anything. I turned my head to look to my arm and look through a transparent spirit arm of light. Believe me, it was pretty amazing. And I stopped in the tunnel. I thought, I don't want to stop here, I want to see what's at the end. And so I turned and looked, and it wasn't though I was walking, it was like you were being drawn, like a moth almost, down into a light. I was drawn towards it, and I was literally coming closer. As I was coming closer, you could see the opening getting bigger. It was like you were coming to the center of the universe. As I got closer, another wave of light broke off with thicker intensity and moved up the tunnel as if to greet me, and I had total joy and excitement go through me as I had an expectation that wherever I was going and whatever I was going to see would be the most incredible and the most awesome experience a man could ever have. I could feel it. I had no fear. I was just absolutely enthralled by what I was seeing. The radiance was getting brighter and brighter. It made the sun look yellow, and it made laser light look dull. Although it had that intensity, it was so spectacular, and yet it was alive. It was a living light and radiance. And as I came out of the tunnel, I stopped. To my amazement, the light that was in front of me seemed to stretch to the extreme of my vision, and the center was more intense and brighter than all of the glory and the radiance that I could see. In my heart, I thought, is there a person in there that's, because I could see greater intensity in the core, I thought, is there a person in there surrounded by this light or radiance? Or is that just a force without a you know what I mean? Is there no one in there, or is it just a force, or is there a God in there? And as I'm thinking that in my heart, it's as though my thinking in my heart or my thoughts are like speech, because a voice answers that thought and says, Ian, do you wish to return? I went, where? And I looked back over my shoulder, down a tunnel, back into the pit of darkness, and with a quick flash in my mind, am I dead out of my physical body? Is this real? Am I standing here in reality looking at what looks to be God? Or am I hallucinating this back in my hospital bed, lying there in my body? Am I dreaming this, or is this reality? It was like a slap of reality. Do you wish to return? I could see where I was going to return, back into hell and back into my body. I said, I wish to return. I don't even know where I am. The voice spoke to me and said, Ian, calling me by name, which again was freaky, Ian, if you wish to return, you must see in a new light. I had been given a Christmas card, which I just read out from the Bible this evening. It said, God is light, and in him there is no darkness at all. Every other religion, every other belief on this planet tries to project that because man is good and evil, God who made us must also be good and evil. Yin-yang, light, darkness. Every Eastern belief and every other religious belief on this planet projects God to be just like us, dark and light in us. How many know you've got good and evil in you? How many know that? But see, we try and project our humanity upon God. The scriptures say God is light, in whom there is no darkness at all. That the kingdom of darkness is a separate, total entity. In God's character, there's no evil intent. His character and his spirit is pure and holy and radiant. Here I am standing in the presence of pure, radiant light, knowing that that must be God in front of me, and I am standing in his presence because I can sense the incredible holiness and purity that's radiating from him. I know there's a person in there, I can't see him because the light that's surrounding him is blocking me from seeing his form. But the voice saying, you must see in a new light, I'm going, that must be God, and he can look right through me. He knows everything I've ever done in my life. He knows my name. He knows every sin I've committed. He's seen every deed I've done, and he is pure, holy light, and I'm getting out of here. I was taught as a kid to be afraid of God, not to be afraid, terrified of him. I was terrified that if you broke one of the commandments, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not, you are finished. So I'm backing off from his presence going, I'm going back to where I belong. I'm not here. I shouldn't be here. And as I'm backing away from his presence, waves of pure white light started to hit me and go through me and surround me. As I stood there, pure, unadulterated love started to flood into my person. I knew what lust was, I knew what sex was and sensuality and passion, but this was pure, unadulterated love with no strings attached. It was not manipulative, controlling, and my heart had been broken through heaps of relationships looking for what I thought to be love. I thought sex was love. I thought that having a relationship with a woman immorally was love, and I thought that was the answer. Trouble is you go from one to another and you'd have your heart ripped out and you'd break people's hearts to the point where I was afraid of relationships because I did not trust myself. And here pure love started to flood into me, and I started to be touched with the love that I'd searched for all of my life. God has made a void in your heart that is there that only God himself can fill. The scriptures say God is love. And pure love began to touch me. I'm saying, God, you can't love me. I've been stoned. More love. God, I've been immoral. I'm unclean. More love. Until I felt the incredible, almost arms of love of God around me, that he accepted me as I was. He accepted me clean. I didn't realize that that prayer I made in the ambulance, God forgive me of my sins, had literally been heard by God, and God had applied the blood of his son Jesus and washed me as white as snow. I had no idea that the sacrifice of Christ had literally cleansed me in that ambulance by faith, and I was standing now before him as if I had no sin. I had no understanding of the grace of God. I had no understanding of the mercy and compassion of God. I had no understanding of the word of God. But I was, believe me, feeling the love of God. And it was just melting my heart. I felt so safe, so secure. So much religion and so many religious people condemn and judge people to hell. And I used to remember you walk into church and they'd look at you and go, where have you been, you rotten sinner? I sometimes would tell them. God does not judge you. God does not look at you with eyes of judgment. God looks at you with eyes of mercy and compassion. And if your heart towards him is to say, God, forgive me. God, have mercy on me. God, I want a fresh start. I want the slate wiped clean. That's exactly what took place in 1982 in that ambulance. And as I stood in the presence of his radiance, in the presence of God, his love touched me. It's the foundation of my knowledge of God, that God's love surpasses everything. If you willingly sin, if you willingly commit evil and willingly go into demonic power, if you willingly deny Jesus, then you're going to look out for judgment. But if your heart is to say, God, help me in my weakness, help me in my, you know what I mean, in my failures, help me, I'm going to try and follow you, He will. And I'm standing there, being bathed in His love, totally at peace, and in my heart I thought, if only I can see who is loving me, if only I can actually see His face, I will know who God is. How many would like to step in and see who it was? I mean, if only I can see you, God, I will know the meaning to life. You can tell me the truth to life. I will need to ask no other person on this planet. If I see you, God, I'll know you. I asked in my heart, God, can I see you? Can I step into the light that surrounds you and see your face? His voice was not negative. His voice was quiet. There was no communication. I thought, if you love me, I'm going to put my best foot forward and step in. I stepped into this light and got shrouded in veils of radiant, I mean splendor. It was just radical. And I stepped in, and because it was so brilliant, I had to look at the ground to see where I was walking. I got encased in dazzling white light. And as I walked into the center of it, it opened up. And as I lifted my eyes up, like a big vacuum in the center, I saw a man's feet, barefooted, and then I saw around his ankle dazzling white garments. And as I looked and lifted my eyes up, I saw his face, and his face was shining as if every pore in his face, there was light literally blazing out of it. I could not make the form of his eyes or his nose or his mouth. All I could see was the chest of a man. I could see the form of a man, but his actual face was shrouded in such brilliant white radiance and purity that I just stood stunned, going, that must be God. No one could look like that. If that's an angel, folk, well, I love to see God. I'm standing there looking at what I believe to be the resurrected Jesus Christ. See, Jesus died on the cross. He was buried for 3 days and rose again from the dead. His spirit man went back into his physical body 3 days later and ascended into heaven. And the scriptures say he's now glorified at the right hand of God Almighty, and we shall see him again. And those who believe on his name shall not be disappointed, but shall be given eternal life and have their sins forgiven. By faith in Jesus Christ, we have eternal life. And here I am seeing Jesus, I believe, in his glorified form. His radiance would fill the universe. His glory would fill the entire universe. And I'm standing looking at his glory and looking upon his form, and I wanted to see his face. I was that naive. I had not read about Moses asking to see his glory. I hadn't read that stuff. When I read that, I fell on the ground and wept and said, God, how, you know what I mean? How could I see your form? Well, I was dead. Moses was alive. And I walked right up to try and penetrate the light around his face to see him. I thought, if I see him, maybe I've seen him in an art gallery. You know what I mean? Seen his face somewhere, I'll know who he is. I walked right up, and as I got right up to his face, he moved. As he moved away, directly behind him with the same shape as the tunnel was a brand new planet opening up before me. It's like standing at an entrance of a cave. We have a penguin cave over at Waihi Beach. As you're going across to Oricau, it's like standing at the edge of a cave looking out onto light. You know what I mean? A new earth. I could see green grass, a river, trees, crystal clear blue sky. I saw a new planet. I saw no ragwort, noddies or thistles in front of me. I saw no herringbone cowshed or rotary. Hallelujah. I saw a brand spanking new planet, paradise. The grass had the same light that was upon Jesus. Although it was green, I could see like the radiance that was on God. It was like the whole of creation was full of life. You know, when you look at grass, it's even got rust on it, or, you know what I mean, some sickness or disease. This was perfect. I mean, I'm just looking at it, zooming out on the grass. It's like if you stepped on it, it would spring back. Even if a big Frisian heifer jumped on it, you'd sure to spring back. It was living. It was full of life. It was perfect creation. I had words that I could just think of it. I'm just standing. He said, I've traveled the world looking for paradise. I thought if I found my deserted island in the middle of the Pacific or the middle of the Indian Ocean, I'd retire from this world's existence and live off the sea. I was quite happy to live in a lighthouse. I liked the planet, I just didn't like the people on it. I love creation, I just didn't like the one that was supposedly the highest form of creation. I'm standing there and I'm looking at it, and every part of my heart is wanting to jump in. Every part of me is wanting to step in. And he stood right in front of me as if to block me. His radiance blocked right in front of me. And he asked me, he said, Ian, now you've seen, do you wish to return? I said, no. Who'd want to return back to this? I'm not a masochist. Who'd want to come back to this? Hell on earth. This world's about to blow itself up. You don't have to be some prophet to figure out this planet's pressed the self-destruct button. She's going to go boom one day. And I'm standing there thinking, I'm standing at the edge of paradise, and he's asking me if I wish to return. I said, no, I've got nothing to return for. I'm not married. I've got no children. I've got no mortgage. I've got no responsibilities. I've got nothing to come back for. He still didn't move. He said, no one has loved me. You're the first one who's truly loved me with unconditional love. And accepted me. And understands me and knows me. You're the only one that's loved me. Please let me in. Please let me in. He didn't move. I was a flank in first 15 in senior rugby. I was going to turn, look over my shoulder and say, goodbye, cruel world, and dive through. I was going to do a Michael Jones and just throw myself. I knew heaven was on the other side. I was literally going to throw myself through. I was that desperate, literally, to get through. I got there by the skin of my teeth, I felt, and I was going in. And I looked back and to say goodbye, cruel world, and I looked back, and next to the tunnel was a vision of my mother. The moment I saw my mother, it hit me. She was the only one that had tried to love me with unconditional love. She was the only one that tried to show me the way of God and to pray for me every day of my life. In fact, I compared notes with her in New Zealand, and she had been woken up and started praying for me and seen my eyes and knew I was nearly dead. My mother actually prayed for me right to the point where I would then have to pray myself and cry out to God. See, your mother can't repent for you. You have to. My mother could pray me up to the edge anyhow and say, choose now, and I chose. And I looked back and I saw there my mother, and I realized that if I went through into heaven, my mother would get a telegram or telephone call from Mauritius the next day saying, your son died of a diving accident. Do you want his corpse in a box or in a jar of ashes, or what do you want to do with him? And I believed as I saw that, that could destroy my mother, because my mother and I were very close. And I just knew that if I selfishly went through into heaven, my mother had no idea that I made it. She would have thought I went to hell and have every good reason to believe I went to hell, along with 95% of my mates, and everyone else on this planet would have said, that boy's gone to hell. Good riddance, bye-bye. I would have thought it too, because I was a million miles away from God until that accident. And as I look back, I said, God, I turned back and said, I can't go through. I have to return. I want to return and tell my mother that what she believes in is real. I don't even know how I got here, but when I get back, I'm going to find out how I got here, and I'm coming back, and next time I get back here, whether any person on this planet believes me or not, I'm going through. I've seen you, and I know you're real. And everyone if they think I'm a rubber room case, I'm going through. If they all think I'm a nutter, I know that I've seen you, God. I know that paradise is set before me, and it's not a bunch of boys with clouds and harps and big organs and little cupids firing arrows at each other, which most TVs present heaven to be. A bunch of boys floating around on clouds. It is a brand new earth. I used to be into Save the Whale, anti-nuke. God said, get saved yourself. Don't worry about the whales. Let me look after them. Can you raise yourself from the dead? God can. He can raise you from the dead. No one else is going to take you there. People say, I know God. I go to church. Does God know you? I'm a religious person. I go to this denomination. I'm not talking about denominations. I'm talking about, have you given your life to Jesus? Church doesn't get you to heaven. Your priest won't get you to heaven. Your denomination won't get you to heaven. Only person that gets you to heaven is the Son of God himself. And it is a heartfelt repentance and sincerity in your heart saying, God, have mercy upon this sinner and come into my life. I can't tell whether anyone's going to heaven. God is the judge of man. I just say, God, clean my heart. I get on my knees and cry out for mercy. God, help me. I want to make sure I'm going. I have a total confidence in my heart. I don't believe it's pride, I believe it's faith that God has saved me, and I know that when I die I have an assurance that I go back into his presence. I said, God, how do I return? I look back and I saw next to my mother, my dad, my brother and sister and thousands of people, a few cultivators, a few surfers, going back, all the way back to behind my mum and dad, thousands of them until their face I couldn't see. And I said, God, who are they? And God said, if you don't return, son, those people will never hear about me because they'll never step foot inside a church. So you got that right, neither would I. That's why we're here, the town hall. Edgecombe, on a Friday night, talking to you, because half of you would never step foot in the church. Some of you feel like you've been tricked coming here. Some of you feel like someone's grabbed you and put you in a headlock and dragged you in here. Well, maybe it's the best thing that ever happened. I wish someone had dragged me into a service, that someone would tell me about a real living God that loved me and that would give me peace and would forgive my sins and give me a fresh start in life. I wanted to know the truth. I was sick of lies. I was sick of these boys running around with bells in their fingers and ears and rings in their noses. I wanted the real McCoy. I said, God, how do I return and go back down the tunnel into hell and back into my body in a hospital bed? And God said, tilt your head. Feel the liquid drain from your eye. Now open your eye and see. And I'm lying back in my body in a split second from being in his presence with my head tilted, which I couldn't seem to do minutes before, with my right eye drained of its perspiration, looking down the length of my body, which has got a sheet on it. I'm on a slab, and I've got a doctor at the end of my bed with my foot up in the air, and he's prodding it like a dead piece of meat. And I'm looking at him with my one eye open, and he's looking at my foot, and I'm thinking, what's he doing with my foot? He's treating me like a corpse. I'm not dead. Did I just see, I know I'm getting a flashback, did I just see God? Did I just have my life given back? I mean, I'm racing between this thing, between me and God standing in his presence, and this guy treating me like a dead piece of meat. Next minute, something seems to really spook him. He goes, I'm giving him the one eye. And you can see this boy's two eyes spinning out like he's got the evil eye. Got the dead boy's eye looking at him. You can see him wanting to run down and close it. You can see that he's thinking that he's hit the nerve. Got the old twitch from the corpse. And I'm looking at him, and as he's looking at me, and I'm going, I'm alive, and he's going, you're dead. In his eyes. We're having this huge conversation together without speaking, and I'm thinking, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. How do you bring a dead man back if he's got my foot? So I thought, God, I'm sick of looking at him. If you've given my life back, can you give me the strength to tilt my head to the left and see out the other eye? And here's the doorway, about where my wife is, 10 feet away, nurses, doctors, orderlies, all packed in, staring at this eye, and this boy's still got my foot in the air. And they are screaming, and these are all the nurses that have been trying to save me, pushing themselves out, hitting each other, wide as it goes, some are freaking out. I mean, everything's going on over there. And I'm thinking, well, where's the boy with the old electrical shock stuff here? You know, get the old heart going. Or the mouth to mouth. The foot you ain't going to do too much with. See, some people get into my face and say, "You never die, boy." Just as I had a dream like that too. Oh, I remember having a dream. That was all in your imagination. Your mind plays funny tricks on you, son. When you've got a whole bunch of nurses and doctors got you in a slab in a morgue and are freaking out and spinning out of their tree because you've been dead for 15 to 20 minutes, when you're dead, you're dead. You know who had to be convinced first whether I saw God and it was real and wasn't Santa Claus and the tooth fairy kind of rubbish? Me. This hard nut had to get converted. This unbelieving, cynical, analytical young lad had to be nailed by God and brought to his knees because he was too proud and stubborn and pig-headed to actually repent. I looked at this going, I've just seen God. I rolled my head back, stared at the ceiling and thought, what's that going to mean to my lifestyle? I used to say, if I see God, I believe him. Well, you just got it, boy. What are you going to do with it? I've tried to live a good life, had hundreds of New Year's resolutions, didn't last more than 10 minutes. I've tried to be good and holy. Doesn't work. It's a joke. There's no one out there. It's a load of rubbish. And as I'm sitting there going, God, I can't live a good life, the voice of God spoke and said, son, if you allow me to work through your life, I'll help you. I said, God, you've got to help me. I said, what will my mates think? Oh, Mac, sniffed too much laughing gas, off the deep end. Yo, here he goes. Bible banger, Jesus freak. He's gone religious on us, the poor boy. You better help him, you know. Let's see if we can get him back. He's gone into one of these Jesus cults. Poor boy. Was a nice guy. What happened to old Mac, eh? I would have said the same thing if any of my mates had spun into this Jesus thing. What will my parents think? What will my dad think? Take me down to the workman's club. Oh, here's my son, the preacher. Well, the boys will be so out of it, you can go on the pool table and just pum, 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 pum. Want a large orange juice, young fella? Yes, straw and ice in it too, thanks. It's easy to go with the flow. It's a lot harder to go against it. It's easy to be a degenerate and a sinner. It's harder to walk in holiness and purity. I lay there and committed my life to following Jesus Christ, the Son of the living God. And you've got to realise I was no saint. You obviously know that by now. If you haven't, I hope I've got the fact that I wasn't a saint out of your thinking. I was as far away from God as you can get. But the living God had mercy upon this young boy who was lost and was living for the moment, was burning both ends of the candle and living for the buzz. He was trying higher and higher buzzes to try and to enjoy himself on this planet, make the most of it. In the midst of it, he could hold down an intellectual job and be a consultant. His natural work life could be together, but his private, personal life was in a shambles. Does that make sense? We've got guys out there, accountants and lawyers, snorting cocaine off their trees. Doctors shooting themselves up, and they were doing it down in Otago when we were there. Doctors loaded up with smack, home-baked, doing their own stuff in the backyard. Personal life in an absolute shambles, the inner man in total confusion, ripped open, but their outward man masks. I'm together, I'm okay, leave me alone. Whatever seems right for you, mate, just do it. God says every man is a sinner. Every man has fallen short. Every man needs to repent. I walked out of the hospital the next day, and God has continued over the last 10 years, not from a one-time experience, but hundreds of experiences with him. Been set free, and I'm married, and I may even be about to take a mortgage. Can you believe it? Having come from the hippie kind of mentality and the Woodstock crew and the alternate lifestyle, I'd be a New Age greenie if I wasn't saved right now and spirit-filled, born-again believer in Jesus Christ, the Son of the living God. There's nothing better. Let's pray. You've heard me rave on here, but I'm trying to, as clear as I can, as realistically as I can, present to you Jesus Christ, the Son of God. And if you want to know Him, you can pray a simple prayer right here in the town hall on a Friday night and say, God, I'm following you. I've had it up to here with my life. I need you. I humble myself. I cry out upon the only name that can save me, the name of Jesus Christ. I surrender my life to you. I give you my life. Take over. And He will wonderfully take over and take care of everything. He'll heal broken hearts. He'll heal tormented and twisted bodies, and smashed marriages, and shattered relationships. He is the Prince of Peace, the King of Glory, and the soon-coming King, Saviour of our lives. If you want to pray with me and commit your life to Jesus, I encourage you to do that in a simple prayer if you follow me in your own seat. Right where you're seated, you can make peace with God tonight. You don't have to be in an ambulance, be in a tragedy. You can do it now. Either you can be humbled by God or humble yourself. God so loves you, He'll humble you one day. But don't wait for it. Do it now. Okay, let's just pray. If you want to do it, pray your own words. You don't have to follow me like a parrot. It's something you pray sincerely from your own heart, something that you really mean and truly is convicted of. So let's just pray together. If it's your prayer, pray with me. God, I come to you tonight. And pray it quietly in your heart, not out loud. God, I come to you tonight. I ask you to forgive me of my sins. As the Lord's Prayer says, forgive us our sins. I sincerely ask you to forgive me of my drunkenness, my immorality, Father, my anger, my hatred, and the many other sins that I've committed. I ask you to forgive me and cleanse me and make me pure. And God, I forgive those who have abused me, who have backstabbed me, who have wounded and crushed me. I forgive them for the sins that they have committed against me, willfully some of them. I forgive them and will take no vengeance. And I give my life, the leadership, my will to you, God. Your will be done. And I ask Jesus Christ, you, Lord, to become my Saviour and King. I surrender my life to you, God, and want to follow your Son in His footsteps. I want to take up the cross and follow Him all the days of my life. Your Son Jesus was ridiculed and laughed at and spat at and crucified. But God, I choose to take the path of humility in the footsteps of Jesus, the Son of God. No turning back. I set my face towards heaven and set my face towards the Son of God, Jesus. I pray this all my life, all my heart. Amen. If you sincerely prayed that from your heart, you just raise your hand. Raise it up real high. Why am I doing this? Because if you can't do it in this gathering with a lot of Christians in here, you won't last 5 seconds out there in the real world. You'll have some boys say, you're a spinner. That was an emotional decision. It was a load of rubbish. No, it's not. Jesus said, if you confess me before man, I'll confess you before God Almighty. If you're ashamed of me, if you're ashamed of the name of Jesus, you won't last 5 seconds out there. I'm not ashamed. I walk into a public bar, I could walk into a red light district and stand there and not ashamed of Jesus. He's the light of the world. If you please stand, if you've raised your hands, and we have just your friends around you just to pray for you, you just make a public thing by standing. The rest of you haven't, lift your hands, just sit. If you've prayed sincerely, can you stand with me? Just want to pray for you. Pray God's blessing on you, God's strength on you. It'll break the fear of man. It'll break what people think of you. If you're afraid of what people think, if you stand up for Jesus, stand up, and there's a few others. So God, I pray that you just free them. If they've raised their hands, to stand up and publicly acknowledge Christ as Lord. That the truth will set them free. Anyone else want to join these folks? I love Jesus. He's the only person who ever loved me. I've got a beautiful wife who loves me. I didn't think I'd ever get married and have a stable relationship. I didn't think I could even hold one. I was so messed up. I didn't even trust myself. But the Son of God has come and helped me to have a marriage that I feel safe with, I feel secure in. Why? Because Jesus has done a work in my life. So you have friends standing. Can you just, you Christians, got some friends standing here. You just gather around your friends that are here. Got some friends standing. You just get to stand around them. I'm just going to pray for them. So it's good to have family, brothers and sisters, and stand with you. Some of them have been praying for you for years. Some of this is the best thing that's ever happened. They can talk to you on a new level. They can talk to you on an intimate level that they've been wanting to for years. They've wanted to really communicate their heart and love towards you, but that sin and that wall and barrier keeps you separate. If you don't have anyone as your friend, someone look around, be their friend. Make friends with them tonight. So let's just pray. If you're still seated and you want to stand, you guys stand now. It's your time. So Father, we just pray. We pray your love and blessing to come upon them. Father, it's a humbling thing to acknowledge that you need help and that you're a sinner. That God, I ask that your Spirit would come and begin to minister to them. I pray that you would touch their broken hearts and their ruined lives. And Father, where they felt like giving up, some even thought about taking their own life. Pressing the self-destruct button, Lord, I pray that you would come and give them a purpose for living. And give them a reason for living. You give them a hope for living, where things seem hopeless. In the natural, emotionally and spiritually, everything seems hopeless, and their family seems hopeless. Their marriages seem hopeless. Their work seems hopeless. Lord, let hope and life come, that they will serve you all the days of their life. That, Father, even now they would know the mercy and the love and forgiveness of Jesus. That, Lord, you'd pour into them and touch them so they'd know you're real. Father, you begin to just melt them with your love. Cleanse them. Strengthen them to stand when the attacks will come, when people get in their face and mock them out and laugh at them. Give them the strength to stand and to go against the flow and to walk for Christ in holiness, purity. Fill them with your Spirit. That they've been full of unclean spirits and drunken spirits and angry spirits, violent spirits. Lord, let your Holy Spirit come and touch them. That's why your Spirit's called holy, because he's the Holy One. Cleanse them and fill them. In Jesus' mighty name. Amen. Some of you might feel the warmth. That's often the comfort and the heat of God. Some people cry. We bottle up tears for years. I wept like a baby boy. At the age of 24, when I actually did a public thing, I wept. I couldn't believe how many tears were in my body as God started to minister to me. It's not a weak thing to cry. Jesus wept with compassion. If your heart's like stone, Jesus Christ can soften your heart. You think you can strike a match on it? Well, so could I 10 years ago. But Jesus took my heart of stone and started to soften it up. You still working? Ask my wife, she'll tell you. He's got a bit of work to do yet. But he's the Saviour of my soul. He is the shepherd, the light of the world, the soon coming King. They're not like those poor souls that were there in Korea and Auckland last night, waiting for 4 o'clock this morning. Matthew 24, verse 38, from memory, says that even the angels don't know the hour or the day. And the Son of God himself does not know when he's going to be sent back. Only the Father knows the time. He'll come like a thief in the night. And there'll be many people saying, here comes Jesus, he's coming tomorrow. Or so he's over here. No, no one knows that. Read your Bible. Don't get it second hand, third hand and fourth hand from everyone else, every man his dog. Get it yourself. Buy yourself a good Bible. And you know who you follow? Jesus. You know I didn't trust one human being on this planet apart from my mum when I got saved? But I trusted God, and that was a good start. I'd read every other book around town. At varsity, you've got to read tons of them. I read from Genesis to Revelations, up to Coromandel and Tyrol, with my uncle, Rex. There's a builder up there, and he thought I'd gone off the deep end too, because here he is reading his Bible day and night. Read the Word of God. 6 weeks it took me. I sped read. Read it about, I don't know, about 50, 60 times in the last 10 years. So do you ever get bored of it? No. And believe me, I wouldn't read more than one book a year. But I read the Word of God. It's eternal. Get plugged into some Bible-believing, Spirit-filled Christians. Are there a bunch of nutters running around? You got that right. A few of them in the church? Yep. So what's new? The world's full of them, so why don't we have a few in the church? Can God help them? Yep. Will some of them take the rest of their life helped? Yes. God hasn't given up. He hasn't given up on me. I would have given up on myself 20,000 times over. Now these guys wanted me to do the next part. It's amazing. My wife got saved at 6, is it 6? 6 years old. She didn't have to go into all the stuff I went into. My wife was a clean vessel all the way through. Her testimony is more powerful than me because of the keeping power of Jesus. I was right out of bounds. You don't have to talk to my auntie and the rest of the family. I was right out of bounds. I was a black sheep. I was way over here. My wife was way over here. Okay? But my wife still had to work through selfishness and jealousy and pride, religious pride, self-righteousness, judgment, criticism, all the deep stuff that's still within the heart of man. You see what I'm saying? We get hung up on drugs and sex and all this as the big ones. God looks at what's behind all that stuff. He realizes, he spoke to me, he said, son, I know why you got into the sex. You're looking for love. Now you found the true love. That stuff can be put to the right time when you get married. He said, I know why you're seeking false comfort and trying to get out of it, because you couldn't handle the reality. That's why you got into your drugs. He said, here, I'm more real. I'm more real than anything. Heaven's more real and hell's real. You didn't understand about the spirit stuff, and God started to teach me. He said, and he started to show me specific things in my life that directly affected my life. He put the jigsaw puzzle of my life together. And by His Spirit, as I was praying, He would take me right back through the whole of my life, from a little boy right through. He would show me direct things. I felt like my father never loved me, never cared for me, never showed any interest in me. And God said, I want to show you the Father's love that you never had. He said, the reason why your dad couldn't love you is because his dad couldn't love him. So you got that right. I knew Granddad. But can you hear? We get down generations and generations where we don't get the love that we're looking for. We then think, well, if we find it in sex. No, so we jump from one partner to another. Then we think, well, we'll open it up and get married to someone. We think then we'll be really loved. What happens? We don't get the love we need. So we think if only we have children, then we'll actually have our love met from these kids. We go grasping at straws the rest of our life, looking for the love that we so desperately need. We end up drawing it and sucking it off other people and taking it from other people. God said the only love that's really going to make any difference is mine. I am love. I am not controlling. I'm not dominating. I'm not manipulative. I'm not backstabbing. I'm not using. You know, human love is so twisted. But if you give your twisted, broken life and manipulative heart to God, He can purify it and cleanse it and give you a good, fresh, clean heart that you can love from the right basis. Amen? We all look for love. Every singer out there is singing about love. 95% of them are singing about sex. It used to be sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Now it's sex, drugs, and rap. In my mum's time, it was wine, woman and song. Hasn't changed. That's the devil's beat. Don't wait till you're old to repent. Do it now. Amen? Enjoy your life. Eternal life starts when you get saved. Amen? I'm living in it. I'm going for it. Don't sit on the fence and muck around. Lock on to Jesus. And God says, I want you to be wholehearted. Don't mess around with lukewarmness. Get wholehearted. Okay. God literally gave my body, my spirit back in my body. I'm lying there still paralyzed. Because if you've been dead for more than 4 minutes, any nurses here or doctors, 3, 4 minutes clinically dead, no oxygen to the brain, even if you're resuscitated, you'll be permanent brain damage and will never be able to walk again. You'll be a vegetable on a machine. I've saved people who have drowned, brought them onto shore and started to do mouth to mouth and had doctors come up, look at their eyes and said, it's only been 3 or 4 minutes, says he's finished. Even if you bring him back, son, don't try. You'll be a vegetable. So if I've got no oxygen to the brain for over 3 to 4 minutes, I'm finished. Your entire nervous system shuts down, and that's it. Basically, you're a vegetable. I am here in the hospital with my eyes open, and all I can move is my neck. My uncle, who was a warrant officer at Burnham, used to work with the paraplegics, and when I was at Lincoln, I stayed in Burnham camp with him and helped him with the paraplegics and took them swimming and played basketball with them. And I remember having a friend falling asleep. He was over by Thames there, and he'd gone to sleep in his little Triumph MG, gone off the road, broken his neck. He ended up in Christchurch spinal unit. I went in there to meet him one day to go and visit him, and he told me, kill me, Ian. Shoot air into my vein. I want to die. I went out there weeping. I didn't know what to do. I love this guy. He's a good friend of mine, and I couldn't help him. I couldn't go back and visit him because he wanted to die. And here I am. All I can move is my head, and I've been dead that long, and I can't move. I mean, I tried to move any part of my body. I couldn't move. I lay there and said, God, if I can't be healed physically and walk out of this hospital, I want to die and go back to heaven now. God didn't take me back, so for the next 4 or 5 hours through that night, God started to heal me. My first bit of movement I got was the upper body. My arms started to move, but I still couldn't feel any pain because the nurse put another drip feed bottle in. I was counting the bubbles going up to try and just entertain myself and stay awake. And then then they moved me into the main ward. They moved me out of there into the general ward, and there's a guy coughing blood up into a bucket next to me, and he had tuberculosis, and I thought, well, at least I'm not as bad as him. I mean, this is a dying kind of ward. And I'm lying there, and eventually I got movement in my lower part of my body. I could actually lift my legs, so my whole body could move, but I couldn't feel the drip feed. Nurse put a third one in. I felt the pain just as she stuck the needle in. I thought, that's good, I got pain. I said, God, I don't want to be a zombie, some kind of a freak that can walk but can't feel anything. And so I lay there and said, God, please heal me that I can have feeling back. And when that needle went in there and I felt pain, it was great, but I tried my lower part of my body, had no sensation of pain, and I dug my toe into my side of my foot with my toenail and I couldn't feel it. It was early hours of the morning, the sunlight was just breaking through the window, and I remember kicking my foot again and I felt pain. I dug my fingernail into my hands and I felt pain. I moved my body, I lifted my whole body up, I lifted my legs up, I tried every part of my body, it was moving. And I thought, right, I'm going to sleep. I was so tired. I stayed awake. I was scared that if I closed my eyes, I'd disappear off into the pit again. And so I lay there, and I was terrified. Now came the time to close my eyes. I closed one, closed the other. Closed them for a split second and opened them again. Tried my whole body again, make sure the thing was moving. Closed them, went to sleep. I must have been asleep for about 5 minutes, and I woke up in a fright to make sure I was still there. I was still there. I tried my body. I mean, I was paranoid that I'm going to slip off into hell. And when you've been there once, you don't want to ever go back again. You wouldn't want your worst enemy to go to hell. So I started moving my body. I closed my eyes, and I went off into the deep, deep sleep. I must have woken up late in the afternoon. I slept the whole day. I woke up to find my drip feed had been taken out, and there's a bit of bread, no butter on it, and a glass of water. I remember trying to eat that. It wasn't very nice. And then I looked over, and to my amazement, standing at the window, I just saw my New Zealand and Australian guy that were in the house with me, and Simon about 5 feet behind them, as white as a sheet, looking at me with the Australian New Zealand guy standing at the window like I was a ghost. And I'm looking at him past the Australian New Zealand to find out his reaction. And he's standing there looking at me as though I should not be alive looking at him. And I'm looking, and next minute the Australian New Zealand guy, see these are those French shutters, no windows there, they just step straight in. Step straight into the hospital. That's one way you get in the hospital. Walk straight in. This is the aircon, no windows. Walked over towards me and said, and I'm still looking at Simon, they said, oh, what happened to you? Simon said you had some really accident or jellyfish and is talking. And I'm going, yeah. I didn't say I died, saw heaven and, hell and all that. I said, well, I nearly died, nearly carked it last night. And they're looking at me and saying, oh, you look all right, you look all right. This place smells, man, you can smell the toilet. Look at it. Oh, mate, who would want to be here? And I'm going, yeah, I know you can smell it. And they said, look, we'll take you home and look after you down at the house. And I said, oh, it's all right, I better let the doctors take care of me. I think they got some clues, And they said, oh, we'll see if he can stand. And so I came over to the side of the bed and stood up. I thought, man. They said, well, see if you can walk. So I'm starting to walk. I'm a bit wobbly. I said, man, I can walk. And so they're kind of walking alongside me and, just kind of leaning on a bit. And they said, well, just see if you can walk down here. And so I'm walking down the main ward and said, oh, we might as well take you home. Better than this hellhole. You're walking, you're okay, mate. And then this nurses started, and a doctor started coming, Indian doctor started coming towards them and going, oh, no, no, no. And they're going, oh, get out of the way, you carry munchers, and Now, it's a derogatory term, but I need to just say it, just so you know, this is reality. This is what's taking place. God hates those kind of things. But that's the kind of things that went on. I'm trying to speak it as it is. Okay, they pushed them out of the way, mouthed off at them. No, it wasn't too. That was nothing compared to what we used to do. And so I'm walking off behind them, and there's a taxi. And we jump in the taxi, and Simon is standing about 5 feet away from me still, like this. And I turn around, look, and he kind of backs off. I said, Mom, come with us. He said, no, not come with you. Not come with you. I'm going, Simon, come in the taxi, man. Cost you money. Not worry, money, not come. I was freaking out, See, I found out later they thought I was a spirit. They thought I was a ghost, spirit. In fact, they named me. I'll get onto that. And so I jumped in the car and took off. Simon must have got another cab or bus or whatever. Went down to the village, past the village, up to our house. Taxi jumps out, walk into the house, and the boys said, oh, we'll look after you. I said, oh, okay, but I'm pretty tired. I'll go and lie down. I'm really wasted. So I went and lay down and went to sleep, and the boys never came. I could hear them having a party, mulling up and having a big party. Boys getting wasted there in the living room. So much for the help. Here they are, going off down in the living room. I could hear them partying. Oh, Mac nearly carked it. And here I am lying under the mosquito net, half dead. Great bunch of friends there. So I'm lying there in the mosquito net and sound asleep. In the middle of the night, I'm woken up like a shock, just startled, like someone had just, what's going on? And then I look, and my whole body is trembling like I'm a nutter, like the whole thing's shaking, like a shivering like a pig. I was scared. And it was beads of perspiration, cold sweat over my entire body. It was like my entire physical body was trembling with fear. And yet deep inside me, I was totally at peace. Not an ounce of fear in me. But my body was trembling and shivering like a pig. So what's going on? So I'm talking to myself, and I roll over, look through the mosquito net, and here at the window, in this particular part of the world, you have steel bars cemented into the window. Steel bars to keep thieves out, and the glass is quite thick because of the hurricanes. Very thick, almost like plate glass. It's very thick glass. And I'm looking out the window through my mosquito net and through the bars, and it looks like there's a whole bunch of creoles outside my window staring at me. That's my first impression. There's a whole bunch of creoles, outside my window, having, you know, looking in at me. I thought, what are you doing at this time of night? And I start looking a bit more intently. I start to see like a red glow around what I can see the eyes, and there's like a red glow around them. And as I start fixing, I start to see a shadow form of not a human being, but like a spirit form back. And as I'd even take more intently look, it's as though I lock on and I can see the slit of a half animal, almost like a cat's eye, looking straight into my eyes. And I'm suddenly realizing that I'm looking at not human beings, but I'm looking at spirits. And they're speaking to me and saying, "You're ours. We're coming home." I'm looking at them, and they're staring at me, and I know that physical windows and bars are not going to stop them, and it's as though they're captivating me, and they're going to enter in almost through your eye gate. And I could feel them being drawn as I'm locked on in fear and being paralyzed with fear, as they're literally trying to hold my grip and start to come at me. And I'm going, "No!" And I grab my torchlight, because if you're scared in the dark of the boogeyman outside as a kid, what do? You turn the light on. So I grab my torchlight, and why do I have my torchlight in my mosquito net? So I can get to the toilet without killing myself, you know, in the middle of the night. So I grabbed the thing, shone it on the window, nothing there. But I know that I just seen a whole bunch of evil spirits staring me straight in the eye and telling me that they're coming home. I shone it through the room because I thought they're in darkness. And you say, where does this stuff come from? You never read this in the Bible. Yes, you have. Matthew chapter 12, Jesus preached about it, clear as crystal. Matthew chapter 12, and verses 43 to 45. Jesus said, when an unclean spirit or an evil spirit goes out of a man, it passes through waterless places seeking rest and does not find it. Then the evil spirit says, I will return to my house from which I came. And when it comes, it finds it unoccupied, swept and put in order. Then this spirit goes and finds itself 7 other spirits more wicked than itself, and they go in and live there, and the last state of that man becomes worse than the first. Jesus said, this is the way that it will be with this evil generation. Matthew chapter 12, verse 43 to 45, sir. Hallelujah. Mark 16, verses 15 to 18, Jesus said, you shall cast out evil spirits. Jesus continually saw a lot of physical healings and miracles by casting out afflicting and tormenting spirits and demons. Now, my lifestyle, what does sin attract? If you commit sin, what do you attract? Spirits. If there is a kingdom of light, there is a kingdom of darkness. Acts 26, verses 18 says there are 2 kingdoms. One's ruled by Lucifer, Satan, the dragon of old, the prince of darkness, the deceiver. And the kingdom of light is ruled by who? Jesus, Prince. Prince of Peace. And here we are. I guaranteed, folks, my lifestyle, I guarantee at least one evil spirit in my life. Now, when I died, that means the Bible talks about this being a temple or a vessel or a body. Okay? Inside there is you, your spirit person. When I died, where did my spirit go? It left this physical body and went where? Into a place of darkness. The scriptures term as a holding tank or a place called hell. That place called hell or Hades is not the final resting place for that spirit or that person. It's the lake of fire, which is the second death mentioned in Revelations chapter 21 and 22. Okay? Now here I am. I died and my spirit, me, left my body. Guess who else was living with me? At least one evil spirit, or another scripture says unclean, or a drunken, or an immoral, or a whatever thing you're into. People, the New Ages call them spirit guides. No, they're demons. Hindus call them reincarnations and giving them supernatural stuff and call it karma. No, they're demons. Spiritists and mediums who actually tap into them saying they're talking to the dead. Who do you think they're tapping into? Familiar spirits that live with that person while they're alive. And you give information on them. They're not tapping in and calling up the person, you're a dead rallo. They're using your grief and loneliness to pull up a demon. You don't have to pull it too far, but you're just sitting outside waiting for you to put your hand on the spirit of the glass or a Ouija board or start calling through colours or through crystals or pendulums and tap into the supernatural. But you're tapping into the supernatural demonic power. These demons had left my body. And very easy to find 6 or 7 worse because I was in voodoo country. They did human sacrifices before the British got there. Now they used animal sacrifices, and we'd stepped into some of them accidentally, going night divings, and had all the Creoles spin out, and because I stepped my foot into the circle one night where there'd been blood sacrifice of an animal for voodoo ceremonies. And they said, we ain't going diving, Jack. I said, well, what's this thing with the candle and the blood and the petals? They said, that's voodoo. They said, we're not dive. I said, okay, we're not diving, I'm going home. See, I wasn't into all that stuff, but there's power in it. So this spirit that left me when I died found 6 or 7 worse, and here they are standing outside my window. See, I know none of this. I never read a Bible. I'm just seeing them coming back for me, yours truly. I'm thinking, what have I done to upset all this crew? You understand? I had felt the presence of evil, but never ever seen it. I'd felt the presence of darkness, or felt the presence. I had even walked and looked at idols and felt power coming from them. I've seen people in the Asia levitate, walk on hot coals, put skewers in their mouths. You say, well, how do they do that stuff? Guess why? They're using spirits, and guess what spirits? They're not the Holy Spirit, it's not the Spirit of Jesus. And if you stand there in a fire-walking ceremony or a kavati ceremony and start binding the demons in the name of Jesus, they'll burn their feet to bits. They won't be levitating, they'll be burning the soles of their foot off because they're tapping into demonic powers that give them supernatural powers. They'll be ripping their backs open and smashing their chests until they bleed, trying to prove how powerful their God is. The Chinese use swords, razor-sharp swords on backs, and say, oh, look at that. Didn't hurt me. The ninja, they start tapping in. Through the breathing, through the martial arts, the same thing. They start breathing them in, start focusing, trying to bring in a point of power. They're invoking spirits. Or your martial arts. You tap down to the Dan, you bow down to the master, the pitcher, you start worshipping. Say, we don't worship. Yes, you do. I had a black belt guy try and come me. He was a Baptist elder. I started talking on this, he started charging me. He went down like a sack of spuds. He tried to stand up. I thought he looked like he died. He stood up and tried to charge me again. This time I thought he had died because he fell at my feet. And I talked to him afterwards. I said, what happened? He said, the first time you talked about my martial arts, mate, I wanted to rip your head off. I came charging at you, and I went down like a sack of spuds because the power of God hit me. I stood up and was going to have a go at you again. And this time I went down and my heart did stop. And God said, if you don't renounce and give up your martial arts, I will kill you. So I lay there and gave him up. God said, you don't need nunchuckers. You don't need little stars and the crow and all that kind of stuff. You need the power of the Holy Spirit. You don't need AK-47s and rocket launchers. You need Jesus Christ. You're not fighting against flesh and blood. You're fighting against spirits. Get the right battle. So here I am with all these fellas checking me out. I was determined to walk in the light, flag going back into the dark side, and I'd never seen anything like that. I was scared to get out of my bed, and, you know, as a young kid, Mum, there's something outside, you know. Mum, leave the whole light on. Turns out to be a bunch of hedgehogs eating snails outside your window, but... There's a monster out there, Mum! You know, it's a blinking hedgehog. They make a terrible noise. You ever walked out there going to get your apples or your grapefruit in the middle of the night and you hear this heavy breathing? It's a hedgehog underneath your tree. Sometimes it isn't, mind you. Sometimes it's got legs. Hear the peeping Toms cruising around the backyard. So throw apples at them. Run home, you know. It's real stuff, folks. Your peeping Tom, repent. It's not comfort. Give you a buzz. Get set free. God knows that. Guess when it's done in darkness. God can help you. God cares for you. So here I am with these things. I got out of my bed with my torchlight. I was scared that they'd gone into the room, so I'm here with my torchlight doing this. I didn't know where they're going to hit me from. I got the main light on. I walked about 3 feet. My legs started to go like jelly. I thought, you've gone off the deep end. Now you're seeing red glowing eyes and you've gone nuts, mate. I hit the ground. I nearly mentally snapped. Have you ever seen anyone snap? End up in Tokanui? I have. Under pressure, any one of us could snap. Emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, any one of us. I don't care who you are. Enough pressure, given at the right time, you'll snap. I nearly snapped. I hit the ground in a mess. I was trembling and ready to go nuts. I grabbed hold of some kind of reality and thought, I'm going crazy. I'm going absolutely crazy. And God grabbed hold of me right then and said, you're not crazy. I said, I am. And he literally had to take me through my life, the first 24 years, right up until that night, and said, son, you're not crazy. You've done, you know what I mean? I had to talk to myself. You've done a degree. You've been normal. You haven't raped, killed, or pillaged anyone. You're actually, you know what I mean? And brought me to that point of going right through my testimony. He burnt my testimony into my mind from the moment I got onto that boat that night to that point right there. And he took an hour and a half to 2 hours of searing. That's why I can relive every part of it. I can get a mental picture of my entire second by second, thought by thought thing that happened. Because God, the next night, seared it, burnt it, branded it into my memory. And he said, son, the only thing that saved your life last night was the Lord's Prayer. Now pray it again and go to sleep. I said, I can't remember the prayer. I don't know the prayer. He said, I will help you. And God, by revelation, gave me the Lord's Prayer. Forgive us our sins. Forgive those who sin against us. My will be done. To the point where he said, deliver us from evil. And hit. God said, that's the one. Deliver us from evil. In other translations, the evil one. And I said, God, deliver me from evil. And I prayed the prayer, and I felt something break in the spirit realm. And I felt a peace, and I felt a normality flood into my heart. And God said, now, son, turn the lights out and go to sleep. I said, that's easy for you. You're up there, I'm down here, and they're out there. And I'm crouched there with the old Asian squat with my torch. I mean, sitting there with my main light on, with my torch on, sitting there, being told to turn the lights out and go to sleep with a whole bunch of red glowing demon eyes outside the window. And I sat there for about 10 minutes and thought about it. I thought, if I don't turn the lights out, I'm going to be a man that's going to have to sleep with the lights on the rest of his life, a grown man that will be scared of the dark. I'm not doing it. So I got up, walked over, turned the main light out. Still had my torchlight on when it didn't go off. I used to do that when I was diving, had to hit it. So I crouched down. It's actually the same torch. I crouched down and sat there with it on still. It's almost like my little Star Wars sword, you know. See, demons hate even physical light. Why do you think most things are done in darkness? Undercover, behind Venetian blinds, shadows. And see, here I am like this, and I thought, I'm going to have to turn it off. It's crazy, I'm getting cold. So I turned the torchlight off. The demons didn't come back, so I went to sleep. Slept like a baby. The next morning, so if you get terrorized with demons at night, you can pray and get that stuff set free. You can be set free. You can have beautiful sleep. You don't have to use tranquilizers. You don't have to use all your migraine tablets. You need some prayer. I stood up, went to sleep. Next morning, got up, I walked down the hallway. The boys had been for a surf. They still hadn't fed me or helped me. Walked into the kitchen, and here are the lads feeding themselves with papaya, and they're talking to each other. And I just looked at them. And as they're talking to each other, I heard 4 conversations. You go, huh? They were talking, but I actually heard what they were thinking about each other. I'm going, that Aussie guy can't stand me, my Kiwi mate. And my Kiwi mate doesn't think too much of him either. So I'm here listening to the 4 conversations. You know, people put masks up or masquerades or fronts and try and say, everything's okay with me, mate. But here behind, it's a load of bull. They're in a mess and they can't stand you. You say, oh, I really like you, but you know in your heart that they hate you. The hypocrites, they hate you. They've got something in for you. You can't trust them. Well, here they are talking to each other. I'm standing there listening to it. The next minute, the Aussie turns to me and starts talking to me. I thought, and I could hear what he thought about me. I thought, how dare you? This is my house. I said, what's going on, God? I'm going nuts. And God said, you have seen people in a new light. You've seen people in a true light. said, God, I don't want it. I can't stand to be able to look at a person and hear what they're thinking, really thinking. It upsets me. Have I still got the gift? Used to really hurt me to feel what people thought about me and hear them. Guys had to do a work. I used to get angry, judge them, get into their face sometimes. God said, no, I didn't give you that information to condemn them or judge them. Pray for them. You were just like that once yourself. In fact, you're worse. Oh, I shot off down the hallway, locked myself in the room. The boys didn't help me, so I had to feed myself during the day. Climbed in the bed, middle of the night, woke up, my body shivering again, trembling like fear. Rolled over, here they are, right next to me. Here's the mosquito net, here they are, 7 to 8 demons standing, looking straight at me, saying, you're ours. To break the hold was again just grab the torch, shone it. And there was nothing there. Went through the room, I thought they can walk straight through walls. They are more real than the natural world. I knew that already. They are more real than the natural world. The spirit world is more real than the natural. And here, I had to get out of my bed and get to the main light. I thought maybe they've gone under the bed. I had no idea what power or strength they had, but if they could walk through walls and had the capacity to terrify me like they're doing, I pulled my mosquito net up and shone the torchlight under the bed, hoping they couldn't have the strength to grab my hand and pull me down and kill me. I got out of the bed and started doing this as I walked again, turned the light on, and I nearly snapped again, and God took me through the same thing and said, pray. Do you think I've ever forgotten about prayer since then? Way of getting you to pray, isn't it? Scare the living daylights out of you. Well, I went to sleep. Next night, I only got a few days to leave the country. The next day I told the boys to get all their dope out of the house, to get all your dope out. They thought I'd gone nuts. I said, I want a whole lot out. I said, what's wrong with you? I said, out. I knew it was wrong, didn't have to be told that. Went to sleep, middle of the night, tap, tap on the window. Here's one of the young girls in the village, the Creole girls that I've been trying to move on over the last month, standing there saying, oh, Ian, you come talk to me, huh? And I'm going, it's too late, leave me alone, it's too late. And she started speaking, and said, Ian, it's important, you've got to come and talk to me. It's very important, you've got to come now. I said, come back tomorrow. No, you cannot, you've got to come now. I didn't realise she's speaking word perfect English. If I'd clicked, I would have realised. The Creoles don't speak perfect English, she's speaking perfect English. I said, okay, come around to the bathroom. I walked out of my bed, down the hallway, into the bathroom. Here's a steel door. These things are built like Fort Knox. I opened the steel door. As I opened it, she put a hand on the door, and I lifted up my eyes as she grabbed the door too. And as I looked into her eyes, I saw the glow of the Spirit, red glow of the Spirit around the pupil of her eyes. Without me even physically showing that, I tried to just slam the door shut. I couldn't. The strength I was using, I should have had her smashed up against the wall, but I could not move her. I couldn't move her. And she's looking at me and she's saying, you're coming with us tonight. I said, no, I'm not. She said, you come with us tonight. And I'm going, who's us? I see you, dear. I'm thinking, who's us? I see you. Where's the us? I'm still unable to close the door. See, a demon-possessed person has supernatural power. When you see a guy go off in a bar or off, it's not just their own physical strength. When you see rage or anger or murder, they've tapped into a spirit of that, and they can throw 4 or 5 men around the room. And when pastors and ministers start moving in deliverance and don't know the anointing and power of God, they'll get thrown around the room too. See, the enemy tries to say he's got more strength. No, he hasn't. And I'm a brand new Christian. I'm 2 days old in the Lord. And I'm standing here looking, and I'm here, I'm waiting for us. I can hear, there's the door, and here's the crack in the door, you know, partly open. I can hear the us coming along the rocks. There's volcanic rock outside our house, and I can hear the us creeping along the side of the house. I didn't know whether there's 1 or 2. There's definitely a couple of people coming towards the door. And I knew that if they got to the door, I couldn't close it. They'd rip the door open, and I'm going, God. And I say, God, what'll happen? And I got a vision dropped straight in my face that I'd be dragged outside and stoned to death and killed. If they got me outside, I'd be dead. I just saw that and said, in Jesus' name. Now, Jesus used to be a curse word and a swear word. For so long, my mouth was like a sewer sometimes. My poor grandmother used to try and clean it up. I must get soap and throw it in there one day. And I mean, in Jesus' name, and pointed. And as I spoke that and pointed, it was like an invisible fist hit this Creole girl, 16, 18-year-old Creole girl, in the chest, and she was thrown off her feet, through the air, and landed 2 to 3 feet behind onto the ground. I'm just standing there going, what on earth is going on? The next minute I see her almost regroup herself off the ground as though what happened to, and then she started to move up, and her eyes just flashed the demons. I'll kill you! And just came up almost like that and launched herself at the door. And I knew this wasn't just a natural thing. This was supernatural. I was watching it as just like a cobra coming to strike, or an animal that had been thrown a stone at. You got no more stones, was now going to have a go at you. Or a Doberman is about to throw itself at you. It was just coming up to hit. I slammed the door shut and locked it, moved up against the door, and just shook. I asked God later, why was I up for death? Why were they trying to kill me? God told me, said, Ian, because you wouldn't turn back to the dark, you know what I mean, to the evil, the only way to shut you up is to kill you. What would the devil lose? 1 soul to heaven. Has he tried to kill me a number of times? You got that right. I've gone through windows. I've had freak-out accidents, which are just straight out of hell. I've had some of the most bizarre stuff take place. But God spared my life. Hallelujah. Why? Because he wants the thousands of people that I saw in that vision come through into heaven. Hallelujah. He wants the truth. He wants the powers of darkness to be exposed for what they are. He wants it to be completely shattered, crushed, smashed under your feet, so you have no doubt who you're serving. This is not some make-believe. This stuff is reality. See, people go to funerals and start praying in funerals because they're sorry and they wish they'd talk to their uncle or their auntie, and in grief start trying to communicate with them. You know who they're communicating? Demons, familiar spirits, ancestral spirits. They're not talking to their auntie or uncle when they go down there and pray at the corpse. When that person died, their spirit left. You know who's hanging around? A host of evil spirits. And if you start talking to them, praying to them, you walk out on the graveside and think you're talking to your old crew. No, you're not. You're talking to a whole bunch of demons who can imitate their voice, who can give you visions and dreams and pictures and communicate with you. And they can come in physical form, they can come in spirit form, they can come in so many different supernatural ways that you would think, with the information that they had, they were your loved one. No, they're not. When a man dies, his spirit leaves his body. They don't hang around for 3 days. Now, I know that's treading on a lot of corns, but that's truth. That's the Bible. I love people. I also love the truth. Don't know how I got onto that. So here I am, I'm expecting a meat axe to come through the door. I used to hate horror. Oh, never into horror. Ever, 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 ever. I'd be in a Cheech and Chong movie for a horror movie. And here I am. I walked down the room, down the hallway, jumped into the bed, and I mean freaked out. I had one more night. The next day my plane was leaving. I went to sleep. And I thought, before I went to sleep, I thought, I'm going to have to get out of here somehow early. Something's trying to take my life. So I told the New Zealand guy, I said, look, do you want to go surfing tomorrow? Special spot, secret spot. He said, sure, sure, sure. So we'll do a dawn patrol. Surf safari. I am going over too long, aren't I? So what happens is I said, look, go and hire the taxi in town and tell Harry to come at 6 in the morning. He's the only taxi in town. Come. And we'll jump in the taxi and I'll go on a surf safari with you. Special spot. I didn't tell them I was going to leave town. I was going to jump in the aeroplane and fly. Because I didn't trust anyone. My life was in danger. I had my boards packed. I had a cab coming at 6 in the morning. I had my backpack there. I prayed. I closed the window, so I thought, and went to sleep. In the middle of the night, tap, tap on the window. Here's the young Creole girl saying, the same girl that had red glowing eyes, tried to kill me the night before, saying, Ian, come outside, I want to talk to you. Dream on, lady. I'm lying there, and she's saying, wake up. And I thought, no, I'm not going to move, I'm not going to wake up. And then the knocking on the window stopped, and there was this quietness, so I rolled over to see what was going on. And to my horror, this small window above the main window was open. And here this huge big arm starts coming in the window, reaching down to the main latch, opens it, the window opens, here's the steel bars and this young Creole girl saying, Ian, come, outside now, huh? We talk to you. Stones picked up, thrown at me. Come on, wake up. Rocks, wake up. Now I'm getting frozen with fear. Then the rocks stop and there's another storm. I'm thinking, what are they doing next? So I gently roll over and look, and halfway across the room is a wooden spear coming straight from my side, and it's just moving quietly across as though, so it won't, you know what I mean, get my attention, and I'm going to have a spear rammed up the side of my gut and through my ribcage. And I'm lying there frozen in terror, and I'm saying, God, and God spoke, best form of defense, attack. I said, what with? He said, your torchlight. Well, it worked the other two nights. So without trying to move much, as I lie there in the darkness, my mosquito net had been tucked in. You always tuck it in under your mattresses so the mozzies don't get in. I started quietly pulling that up as the spear was getting even closer to my side. I pulled it up, I got the torchlight and flashed it on, and as I lifted up the net, and it hit the eyes of a large Creole guy I'd never seen. His eyes were full on red glow, and he screamed, "Ah!" And I went, "Ah!" I did. I charged at this guy because I wanted to get the spear out of his hands, so I grabbed it in my hands, rammed it towards his face to break his grip, pulled it out, and then threw it past his head, shone the torch on him. There's another Creole guy next to him, and I shut the main window, shut the top one, and shone the light on these two Creoles and this young girl. And it was like, you ever had a bunch of stones in your hand? If you're ever in Asia, you have packs of dogs go for you sometimes. They're so hungry, and you just hold them in your hands and you throw them or you threaten it. Well, as I shone the torchlight on these three Creoles, it was like there were dogs cowering back from a bunch of stones. They cowered back across the next door neighbour's open paddock and rocks and back up into the village. It's 2 in the morning. I didn't sleep that night. Backpacking my 2 boards and waited for 6. 6 came, the boys are up, no taxi. 6:30, no taxi, I'm spinning. The boys are getting restless, saying, oh, flag it, we might as well go back to bed or go somewhere else, go for a surf out here. I said, no, man, hang in. I said, Spence, come here. I said, why? I said, go down the village and find out where Harry is. So he motors on down the village, comes racing back. He said, we're not going surfing. I said, why? He said, there's a real commotion going on in the village. I said, what's happened down there? He said, you won't believe it, but someone stuck rebar up through Harry's radiator core. He said, I can see it stuck through. Someone's got steel rods and rammed them through his radiator. And Harry and all the village is in uproar because no one knows why that's happened. Harry's got no enemies. God. And he said, what's going on? I said, look, I can't tell you, man. I need to get out of this place or I'm dead meat. He said, what are you into, drugs or scams or what happens? What's going on? I said, I can't tell you. I can tell a host of demons are trying to kill me. Lock me up too. I said, no, mate, I've got to get out of here. I said, well, he said, what can I do? I said, look, please go straight up to pretend you're going to Port Louis, the capital, go up to Catrabon and get a taxi. Come down here, guys, Raj, give him this money, hire him for the day. Now a lady comes screaming in, runs into the house and said, Ian, Raj, when we drove through, the Creoles are doing this, and he doesn't want to go. He's sweating like a pig, and he doesn't want to go, man. He's going to drive home. He wants to give the money back. I said, why are you talking to me? Grab him. And he ran out there and grabbed hold of him, old Austin Cambridge, and the Australian guy who was a Bass Strait oil rigger said, what can I do? I said, get my boards on the racks, put my backpack in the boot there, and I said, come and get me and walk between me and these, what's going on? He said, have they got guns? I said, I don't know, man. He said, they're not after you, they're after me. And then we walked out, and there's a whole stack of Creoles with rocks and sticks. This is weird, man. Outside, I was loved in the village. Suddenly, this is all going bizarre on me. Outside my house, smashing the ground. The big guy, this guy Paul, or the nickname was Gnome, he'd been enough rumbles in his life to sink a ship, and he just stormed towards them. He's a big guy with a beard, and he was going to charge them. And he stormed, and I jumped in the back seat. And then he motored and jumped in, New Zealand guy on one side, the Aussie on the other, and we shot off. We got to the airport, I checked in, and I paid for the cab, and the boys went. I was there for about 15 minutes, and the guy said, "Mr. McCormack, please come to the counter." I walked up to the counter, and the guy said, "I'm afraid we've double booked, and you're going to have to take another flight." I looked at him. I nearly reached over and grabbed his tie and pulled it down onto the counter and said, "No, I'm not." Well, I didn't have to pull it down because he knew my eyes were pulling him down on the counter. I said, "I'm not going." He backed up. I said, "I am going on that plane. You messed up big time." It wasn't too sanctified mouth. I said, "You messed up." And I was starting to walk almost over the counter. I said, "I'm going on that plane." He said, "Yes, sir, we will see what we can do." And into the manager's office. Wham! Come back out, and he's backed off the wall. I said, "Well, have you done it?" And he said, "Yeah, cool down, settle down. We've put you in gold class." I said, "What's that?" He said, "Oh, that's business class, and you fly." I flew. Falklands Islands was going on right then. As I'm flying in, I'm going, "Don't cry for me, Argentina." You know what I mean? I thought, "That's great. Get back to New Zealand. I'll put a backpack on, an M16, and it'll be apocalypse now." Get saved, haven't even read the Bible, don't even know God, and we're going into the end time, you know what I mean? Flying to Oz. I'm going to finish in a few minutes if you can, I'm flying to Oz. My brother picks me up. He said, "Man, you're skinny." See, I hadn't had any antitoxins for my body. My body was going down like this. So the poison in my body brought my body down like I was an addict. And although I was eating, I was just shrinking. And my brother took me down to the bar in Fremantle. He said, "Well, what's going on?" I said, "Look, I died and saw heaven." And he's going... "Here, you want another one?" He said, "That's too, come on." He said, "We better go home and put you to bed or something." I was buzzing, Went to sleep, and I said, "Where can I sleep?" He said, "Oh, my mate's in Sri Lanka, you can go and use his room." So I went to sleep in his room, fell asleep, sound asleep, middle of the night, woken up, and there's a whole bunch of white eyes looking at me, a whole bunch of white spirits looking at me, ghost-type spirits looking at me. Oh, man, was I angry. I said, "What did you do getting on the plane? Follow me all the way from Mauritius?" Because I knew how to get rid of them. Prayer. But I wanted to give them a bit of my mind. I said, "How dare you?" I turned the light on and stormed around the room. As I walked past the fireplace of one of these old, these old homes, here was a little Buddha. Rose petals and incense, joss sticks, team. Your little jasmine smells to get rid of your dope smell out of your house. No, these things are actual temple worship used to conjure up spirits. They're used in Buddhist ceremony of worshipping spirits. Here I am, I walk straight past and look at this idol, and God, the Holy Spirit, says that white-eyed demons you just saw came out of that idol. Well, there goes karma, Buddhism, and reincarnation straight down the tubes for the rest of my life. Know where that stuff came from? And God said, that's exactly where those demons come out of. He even said, you don't have to worry about having enough demons in Mauritius. Australia's got its own. I said, how do I get rid of them? He said, pray. So I prayed, bound them, and went to sleep. They didn't trouble me. I got up the next morning, said, what you made into? Boy that went to Sri Lanka. He said, oh, he's trained to be a Buddhist monk in the Temple of the Tooth and Candy. I said, oh, been there and done that, where they celebrate Buddha's tooth. They ripped it off when they were in Thailand, raced down to Sri Lanka, built a rock fortress and fought for thousands of years to keep his poor tooth as some kind of a powerful sacred item, and celebrate it for 10 days of a year on elephants with golden tusks and walk around the streets worshipping this tooth of Buddha. Till the Poms came along and wiped them out. That's how Christianity got into actually Sri Lanka, is because they realized that the power of the God that whipped them must be stronger than Buddha's tooth. And you think Thailand's a lovely place to go? No, that's another place where the rest of his body is spread around. You want to worship a dead man and have parts of his body? Worship the living Christ. You will not find any bodies of Jesus. If you go to Jerusalem, you'll find his tomb is empty, and it says on the sign as you walk out, he is risen, he is no longer here. We're not worshipping a man, we're worshipping the Son of God. Hallelujah. And Jesus isn't just some prophet or some nice teacher. Every other religion grabs Christianity and starts to mishmash it into their religions. You say, how could you? You're at a lower level of revelation, Ian, that you are speaking against other religions. How dare you? Jesus Christ did. He says, you'll have no other God than me. Jesus told his men to destroy and burn and smash idols and to worship the true living God. So, Father, we pray that you would just come and set people free that are involved in witchcraft, spiritism, New Age, crystals, Ouija boards, seances, and every form of occult from Satanism, Lord, right down to martial arts and every other form. I pray that you would come by the power of your Spirit and they would recognize that the idolatry and the powers of darkness are riddled behind the idols of Ganesh, Shiva and Brahman, and that they can be set free from the power of Jesus and the name of Jesus. Amen? Who would like to repent? Anyone else? Got one brother down the back. Anyone else want to follow Jesus? I'm going to do another altar call. Stand to your feet. If you want to repent and give your life to Jesus, I'm giving you the second barrel just then. Power of God's here. Presence of God's here. You can get your crystals and smash them. Get your idols. I had a pound of female heads up in the ceiling of my poor grandmother's house at Waihi Beach. The poor old dear went off and played bowls down at the bowling club, and God told me to go up and get my stash. I climbed up in the ceiling. They've been sealed in AG jars, and God said, burn it. I pulled it down, a pound of female heads that almost turned into hash resin, went downstairs at the back of Waihi Beach, the back of my grandmother's house, and started burning them. Just before I lit the match, the Spirit said, why don't you sell it and give the money to the church? They're always asking for offerings. I said, how can you give drug money to the church? The Spirit then said, give it to your brother. You'll have your brother's love for the rest of your life. You give him a pound of dope. So you can't do that. Look what it's done to my life. I then started to burn it, and the fire started burning, and the wind started to turn the dope smoke towards me. And the Spirit said, take one last toke. Spot it. I said, no, I'm not. And the heads were starting, because of the seed heads, were actually bursting and throwing the dope out onto the ground and smouldering. I started throwing them back in to burn the whole lot. And the voice said, hey, why don't you keep the stuff in case you change your mind about this religious Jesus stuff, and put it in roach containers, and then you can get out of it if you change your mind about following Christ. I said, thank you for reminding me about my dope and my seeds and my roaches and everything else. I'm going to go. If some of you don't know what I'm talking about, it's good. Some of you do. And I'm giving you the lot because some of you need to hear it. And picked the whole lot up, and I went around, cleaned the house, burnt it. I was completely set free from any kind of dope addiction. Bang, one time, finished. Didn't touch it. I could smell it 10 miles away. Smell it on clothes, smell it on your breath. And the boys cruised around about a week later, said, let's go to Raglan. And of course, they got logs, these cigars, trying to get me stoned. I got my nose up like a cat to the window going, you know. You don't need to get off your face. Get full of Jesus, full of the power of God. Used to do the home brew, pull the home brew down the drain. You don't need any of it. I used to smoke a pack of cigarettes, pack and a half, because I used to mull up my dope with it. Got addicted to tobacco. Finished that one too. Anyone else want to stand for Jesus? You look like good people here in Edgecombe. You want to stand up and follow the Holy One of Israel? You're not talking to follow me or the full gospel or any other church. You're following Jesus Christ, the Son of God. Set me free from the power of darkness. Deliver me from the chains of Satan. Cleanse me of my sin, and I forgive those who have sinned against me. Take control over my life, and set me free. Let the power of your Spirit come, Lord, into my life. Let me walk for you. In Jesus' name. Amen.
Where can I go if my tears be just